a sufficient number of members present to permit us to open the meeting, I do so declare. As members are joining us, we're going to go through some open of the meeting parliamentary procedures and some welcoming and some activities before we go into voting. So I feel that we can proceed at this time. We also have a bunch of staff that is providing support to town meeting members in the transition. Thank you everyone for your time in working through the little hiccup we had with the Zoom link, and we really appreciate that. Welcome to all. To our town meeting members, welcome back. And to our brand new members, a very warm welcome and our sincere thanks for your decision to serve our community and represent your precinct. I also want to welcome members of town staff, members of boards and committees, town consultants, and article presenters, as well as residents and our other visitors who have all joined us tonight. Welcome one and all. I'm Heather Von Mering, your town meeting moderator. I am joined by the town clerk, Ms. Mary Ellen Lannon. She is off to my right, who is seated in the room with me. Also with me and in this room and off camera is staff from the town clerk's IT department, Mr. Matthew Griffin, who's way off to my left. Town council is on my left. Mr. Mina Macarius of Anderson and Creer, and WinCam staff is also in the room. We also have a bunch of WinCam staff who is not in the room, but in the vicinity to support us tonight. If for members of town meeting, if you need technical support throughout the duration of town meeting tonight or the ongoing nights hereafter, please feel free to use a Q&A function as a technical helpline. A deputy moderator and town staff will be monitoring it to support attendees and town meeting members. We will discuss how to get the attention of myself shortly. If you have a pen and paper available, I'm also going to be providing you 2 phone numbers to use as helplines if you should lose power, internet service, or having technical issues. The first phone number is 781-721-7130. Again, that's 781-721-7130. The second number is 781-721-2050. Again, that's 781-721-2050. At this time, we're going to run two test questions on vVoter. And so the first question. Absolutely. I am getting requests to roll through attendance at this time. So we're going to go to your vVoter screen and we will roll through all the precincts in order, starting with 1 through 8. And we will look at who is present at this time. All right, thank you, town meeting members. As you saw, that is currently who is present. We are checking alongside with the Zoom. And for all those, if you use the raise hand feature, it's actually better to go to the Q&A and ask your question directly there. Let's run a couple of test questions real quick, and then we'll go into some more opening activities for our town meeting. The first test question will appear on your vVoter. And these are just practice, trying to be fun, questions of town meeting members to just also check to make sure that you are all comfortable with the vVoter voting process. So the first test question for you is, have you eaten any leftover Halloween candy today? So if you have, yes. If you haven't, no. If you'd prefer not to say anything, abstain. And let's practice our voting. So town meeting members, we give you 45 seconds to do your votes. So the reason we do the longer time frame is some people are viewing through WinCam as well, so they could turn to vVoter. They struggle with Zoom and prefer WinCam to follow. So we need to have a slight delay, but the vVoter is 45 seconds. And at this point, I typically would call the vote, but we're going to roll through and you'll see the precincts real quick and how you voted. And here we go through the precincts. As a reminder, town meeting members, if you vote one way and then you change it in that 45 seconds, it will change. And so if you go back and forth, but when I call the 45 seconds up, that's when whatever you last entered is what you voted as. All right, if you had any problems with that, can you please let the go through the Q&A and let the deputy moderator know? Moving onward, we're going to do one more test. Moving onward, we're going to go to the second question for practice. And here's the question of the second question. Will Winchester football beat Woburn Memorial on Thanksgiving Day? All right, we're going to quickly roll through the results of that from each voter. On most questions, if it is a rather fast, we will, and there's a big difference between them, we will be scrolling, we won't be scrolling through each precinct due to time. For the more closer votes, we will be scrolling through the precincts throughout town meeting. As a reminder to town meeting members, this came up at the spring town meeting. When you abstain, it does not count towards the yes or the no vote. Doing nothing, you don't count towards the quorum of the vote. All right, while we scroll through, I'm going to move onward so we can keep this going forward. All right, moving to the parliamentary procedures and practices. I next want to highlight some important parliamentary procedures and practices. These practices are employed in service to you, the meeting, to provide a fair and orderly process to facilitate your important decision making. If you turn your attention to your V voter in the bottom right, there's a speak button. And if you click that, a drop-down menu will open with the following. The first item is a speak on the motion. This enters you into queue, into the line. This will put you in a queue on my screen to my right. This is equivalent to raising your hand if you are in person or standing at the mic. Always, remarks when you speak to a motion should be relevant to the motion under discussion. The second item is a point of order. This allows a member to raise a question of order to my attention if they feel there has been a breach of parliamentary procedures or conduct. As a reminder, we are never to attack or make any allusions to the motives of members of this body. There's no tolerance during this meeting for inappropriate language or name calling that is offensive to any of our community members. This would be the means available to members to gather my attention if there's a concern related to parliamentary procedures or you want to bring my attention to inappropriate conduct of a member. The third item is make a motion. This puts you in queue with the speakers, but it also alerts me and staff, the deputy moderator, to your tensions. So when you turn to speak, staff is ready. As in the remote setting, it takes tremendous work behind the scenes to take on some of the motions in the moment. The fourth item, second motion, is to second a motion that is before town meeting. 5, motion to move the vote. This motion closes all debate on a motion and moves to immediate vote to take into consideration, ending the debate with no further discussion. Members should only use this if you begin to feel that you've heard sufficient debate on a motion, and especially if you feel that everything that can be said has been said, but perhaps not just by everyone who wants to say it. This means you are asking your fellow town meeting members to indicate by a vote whether they too have heard enough debate. 6, cancels your request. When you click it, the previous request is out. If you make a selection and are unsure you are in line, please use the Q&A of Zoom, or when possible, I will go through and tell you who is in line on the vVoter screen. However, if you repeat your request and you are in line, if you hit repeat your request and click the button a second time, you are removed out of the line. So you need to be patient at times. There are members who do want to speak and are waiting in line in front of a lot of people. Also, just so you know, I prefer to go in order in the base and the timestamps of each of your requests. However, there are times where certain members have had a lot of airtime, and I will be going to members who have not yet participated first, but are in line. We'll also not be allowing members to speak more than once unless everyone in queue has spoken at least once as well on the same motion before us. I have screens in front of me. I'm pretty much in mission control, and that shows me your selections as they occur. When I recognize you to speak, I will state your name as it is written in the queue and to the best of my abilities the moment. Once you have been recognized to speak, please state your precinct, and also you are encouraged to let me know how you would like to be identified going forward. I ask that I be identified as Madam Moderator. In closing on our parliamentary procedures and practices, we must bear in mind as we cast our votes not only our personal interests, but also those of our community as a whole. As we deliberate, let each of us here tonight maintain an open mind, an open heart, graciousness when we disagree, and a healthy sense of humor so that debates of this meeting will not be a source of division among us when our business here is finished. We will continue our meeting tradition with the Pledge of Allegiance. Scouts of America Troop 507 will be doing a flag ceremony and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. For those members who would like to join me, please rise.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may please be seated. Finally, before I move on move on after the parliamentary motions, I want to take a moment to thank all of the members of our community who have retired from the roles of leadership. Due to the overwhelming agenda we have before us, it will not permit us to address each and every one of them. That does not mean our gratitude and appreciation for their service is in any way diminished. Thank you so much. Moving on to the preliminary motions. Page 1 of your Town of Winchester 2021 Fall Annual Town Meeting Articles, Motions, and Comments booklet with the blue cover. It is moved and seconded to adopt the resolution relating to preliminary motions as printed in your motion book, page 1. This does not include the consent agenda. Please note on number 3, we will not be meeting on Thursday, November 11th in observation of Veterans Day, and will continue on Monday, November 15th, 2021 if needed. So on your Zoom screen, you should be able to see what the motion is. And if you go to your view voter, seeing that there's no one rising or requesting to speak through the speak function, a vote of the majority of the members present is required. The question is on the approval of the preliminary motion shown on your screen and is printed in your motion book on page 1. Please turn your attention to your view voter screen and select yes if you are in favor and no if you are opposed. We will provide 45 seconds for members to navigate through all the screens. Once you have voted, a gray box will appear that states vote received. 45 seconds. Thank you. There are 152 in the affirmative and 1 in the negative. The affirmative has it and the motion is adopted. I am pleased to announce that I am appointing Ms. Sam Allison of Precinct 3 as the Deputy Moderator for Town Meeting to assist me in the conduct of the Town Fall 2021 Town Meeting. Continuing on to page 1 of your Town of Winchester 2021 Fall Annual Town Meeting articles, motions, and comment booklet with a blue cover. It is moved and seconded that the 2021 Fall Town Meeting advance for the consideration Articles 2, 11, 15 through 18, and 20 through 24, and take actions on such articles without debate on any of such articles, provided that upon the request of 5 voters at this town meeting, made before the vote is taken on this motion, or otherwise at the moderator's discretion, an article shall be removed from the consent agenda and shall be acted upon in the ordinary course of business at this town meeting. As a reminder to town meeting members, a consent agenda is used when the opposition feeling is that it is useless to oppose or discuss the matter and they simply acquiesce. Agenda items on the consent agenda tend to be simple actions or one with no opposition or very minimal opposition. However, if you have any questions on the consent agenda, debate is not permitted. Now is your time to do so. Seeing no one rise by the request to speak function of vote of the majority of members present is required. The question is on the approval. Oh, I'm sorry. A vote of 4/5 of the member present is required. The question is on the approval of the consent agenda on your screen as printed in your motion booklet on page 1. Please turn to your V-Voter screen and select yes if you are in favor, no if you are opposed. We will provide 45 seconds. Thank you. There are 144 in the affirmative and 4 in the negative. The affirmative has it, and the motion is adopted. Thank you very much. Moving onward to page 2 of your Town of Winchester Blue Booklet. It is moved and seconded that the reports of town officers and Finance Committee be received and filed. Prior to doing that, I see that we have Mr. Nathan Rome of Precinct 1 requesting to speak. I'm unclear on why you're requesting to speak, but I wanted to make sure that if there's an issue going on that I can support you. All right, I assume that you are all set. If you have any issues, please use the Q&A and let's proceed. A vote of the majority of the members present is required. The question is on your screen and is printed in your motion booklet on page 2. Please turn your attention to V voter screen and select yes if you are in favor, no if you are opposed. We will provide 45 seconds. Thank you. And as a reminder, this is Article 1 to hear the reports of the town officers and the Finance Committee. And the alarm sounds, 45 seconds. There are 155 in the affirmative and 1 in the negative. The affirmative has it and the motion is adopted. Thank you very much, town meeting member. For the report, on behalf of the town, we're going to our newly interim town manager, Miss Beth Rudolph. This is pre-recorded, so we will be having our IT director play that for you in a moment.
Good evening, Madam Moderator and town meeting members. I'm pleased to submit my first report to town meeting as acting town manager. I've had the privilege of working for the town of Winchester for the past 17 years and have served as town engineer since 2010. I was appointed as acting town manager by the select board effective October 2nd to fill the opening left by former town manager Lisa Wong. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to serve the community in this interim capacity and look forward to working with members of the select board, town meeting, town staff, boards, and committees over the coming months. Our community faces a number of important decisions and challenges as we head into town meeting and the FY23 budget season, and I look forward to working together to engage in a respectful public process as we debate the matters before us. As we think back on the past year and a half, it's impossible not to reflect on the impact COVID-19 pandemic has had on our community and our personal and professional lives. Although we still face many challenges, there are many reasons to feel optimistic. Since we met last spring, our town hall, library, and Jenks Center have reopened to the public. Our schools are back to full-time in-person classes, and our town construction projects and capital initiatives continue to move forward. Our health department and Board of Health remain essential to keeping our community safe and managing the town's COVID-19 response through weekly community testing, contact tracing, and vaccination efforts for both COVID-19 and the flu. I want to also take a moment to acknowledge the efforts of our town staff, boards, and committees who have worked diligently throughout the pandemic to serve our community and keep the wheels of town government moving through these challenging times. There have been several new personnel changes and new additions since town meeting met this spring. Dr. Frank Hackett has been appointed as the town's interim superintendent of schools effective July 1st, and the school department has hired Peter Rowe as the interim finance director. The town has also filled the positions associated with 2 new initiatives funded at spring town meeting. Ken Pruitt has joined us as the Sustainability Director, and Kristen Romaine has been hired as the town's mental health wellness social worker. Please join me in welcoming them to Winchester. The federal census was completed last year and showed that the town of Winchester population increased approximately 6.6% between 2010 and 2020, from 21,374 people to 22,970 people. The majority of residents fall into the 18 to 65 age group, with 28.6 less than 18 years of age and 17.7 greater than 65 years of age. The population increase did not result in any changes to the town's own precinct maps, and no changes were made regionally to our Senate representation. Winchester Precinct 6 will, however, gain a state representative from the 15th Middlesex District. Despite the uncertainties associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, the town had a financially healthy closeout to fiscal year 21. Our property tax revenues met expectations, motor vehicle excise revenues were higher than expected, and other local receipts came in higher than budgeted. The town also benefited from the FEMA Public Assistance Program and the CARES Act, which helped to offset the cost of various municipal and school-related COVID-19 expenditures. The Department of Revenue certified the town's free cash balance at approximately $13.4 million in September 2021. The Select Board have previously adopted an operating reserve policy that strives to maintain the town's operating reserves between 6 and 10% of general fund revenue. For FY21, the operating reserve is 14.4%, or approximately $5.7 million above the 10% target. It should be noted, however, that approximately $1.7 million of free cash is proposed for use at fall town meeting, though some of those items are reimbursable. If approved, that would bring the operating reserves down to 12.8%. DOR also certified the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund retained earnings at $1.9 million and the Recreation Enterprise Fund retained earnings at approximately $245,000. This slide shows the amount of free cash and retained earning balances over the past 5 fiscal years. The healthiest balances for free cash and the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund were for FY21, which was helped by conservative spending, COVID-19 assistance, and in the case of the Enterprise Fund, a dry summer combined with increased water usage due to people spending more time at home since March 2020. Despite our healthy FY21 closeout, the town faces a challenging budget climate in future years. As we look towards developing the budget for FY23, there are several key budget drivers that we will be evaluating. At the top of the list is collective bargaining agreements, since all municipal and school contracts are up for renewal at the end of the current fiscal year. Other drivers include health insurance and energy costs, COVID-19 related expenses and uncertainties, capital project needs, and other new initiatives. On the school side, there remains uncertainty regarding school enrollment and impacts from the 40B project currently under construction, as well as impacts from increasing special education needs. I will be working closely over the next months with department heads, senior management, the Select Board, and the school department, and the Finance Committee to develop the FY23 budget and evaluate future year scenarios. In the next few slides, I will provide a brief update on various existing capital initiatives, including flood mitigation, water, sewer, and drain projects, transportation, and school buildings. First up is flood mitigation. The town has made significant progress on implementation of our flood mitigation program since it was first conceptualized over 20 years ago. All but 2 of the projects have been completed. Construction is currently underway on the Swanton Street Bridge project, which is expected to be finishing up in late November. Thanks to the support of the voters and town meeting earlier this year, the town is in the process of designing the final flood mitigation project, which increases the capacity of the culvert under the railroad tracks behind the Morocco School. Construction is expected to start in 2023. The town just completed year 4 of our MS4 permit requirements, which included adoption of updated stormwater regulations for new and redevelopment projects. We are now moving forward with our year 4 permit requirements. Significant improvements will be taking place at the North Reservoir Dam over the coming year, including improvements to the spillway and larger reconstruction project to bring the dam back into compliance with dam safety requirements. The town is also continuing our multi-year lead neck and lead service removal program, which is funded with assistance from the MWA. The town is working with Mass DOT on a Safe Routes to School project at the Vincent Owens School, which includes sidewalk improvements and installation of a permanent traffic signal at Johnson Road and Ridge Street. That work is expected to be complete next summer. The town has bid and awarded the project to reconstruct the intersection of Church Street at Waterfield Road, and that project will start construction next spring. The town is also working on a downtown action plan for the town center to look at traffic calming improvements and other pedestrian and bike accommodations, as well as a parking management study. And finally, after many years of work, the MBTA has bid the Winchester Center Station Rehabilitation Project, and construction is expected to start later this year or in early 2022. The town is moving forward with immediate repairs to the Morocco School that were funded via the override this spring. New boilers have been delivered and are currently being installed, and design is underway for the roof and electrical repairs. The architectural and engineering team for the Lynch School feasibility study has been selected, and the school department is holding a community kickoff event on November 16th at Town Hall. Two large 40B projects have begun construction in Winchester. One is located on Cambridge Street across from the Whole Foods Plaza, and the other is located on River Street off of Cross Street. The Cambridge Street project will create 95 new units, and River Street will create 147 new units. These projects bring the town's affordable housing percentage to 4.8%. Construction is currently ongoing for two Eversource transmission projects, the 115 kV and the 345 kV. Construction on the 115 kV line will be substantially complete this year, except for some work on Bacon Street near the Wedgemere Station. Work will be ongoing throughout 2022 on the 345 kV project. Construction will be focused on Washington Street between the Aberdeen River and Forest Street for the remainder of this year. And finally, I just wanted to briefly acknowledge our business and restaurants who have weathered an extremely difficult past year and a half. I hope that you will join me in supporting them throughout the year, but especially during this holiday season. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to working with all of you over the coming months.
Thank you very much. We are going to move on to our next speaker, which is Dr. Megan Blackwell, Chair of FinCom. For the report of the FinCom, we'll be going to the IT Director, who will be sharing a video with you.
Good evening, and thank you, Madam Moderator, Select Board, town meeting members, town staff, and my colleagues on the Finance Committee. I'm Megan Blackwell, the Chair of the Finance Committee, and tonight I will provide our typical wrap-up of the recently ended fiscal year FY21 and highlight challenges to keep in mind for the next budget cycle. I'll start with a high-level summary, so-called a bottom line up front, which summarizes the revenue and transfers in, the expenditures, and then combines that to express the operating reserves as a percentage of the total revenue and transfers in. So starting in the upper left, the revenue was budgeted at $130.82 million. The actual was higher, 132.94 million, which represents a 5.38% increase from FY20, primarily because the local receipts were up 20%. The expenditures were budgeted at 134.45 million. The actual was reduced to 128.91 million. This is still a 3.6% increase from FY20. And the largest explanation for the reduction is the higher turnbacks than usual. And we'll dig into those numbers on the next slides. But I think overall, this was a very conservative budget in the face of COVID. And the town manager's office and the select board and all the staff should be commended for their heroic efforts. The spending freeze helped keep the expenditures lower than budgeted, as did the turnbacks that I mentioned. So the operating reserves, this is a general measure of the financial health of the town, and the combined undesignated fund balance and general stabilization balance of 19.08 million expressed as a percentage of the total revenue and transfers in the 132.94 million came in at 14.35%. So this is very good for the town, as we typically recommend a range of 6 to 10% for this figure. So let's dig into the revenues a little bit more. So they were up from last year. The local receipts really drove that increase. The taxation at 106.6 million was as expected, although the state aid was reduced a bit. So the taxation is from real estate, personal property revenue, and the transfers in represent the indirect costs for the enterprise funds, the building and stabilization, and the unallocated wage articles. So as I mentioned, the local receipts was up 20% thanks to increases in excise taxes, penalties and interest, trash disposal, fees, and license and permits. So now let's take a closer look at the expenditures. These are the expenditure categories. Education at 56.93 million is the bulk of our budget, followed by personnel benefits at 18.66 million, debt service 12.67 million, transfers out 12.27 million, public safety 11.13 million, DPW 8 million, and then rounded out by general government 4.95 million, culture and recreation 1.91 million, and health and social services at 0.83 million. So the turnbacks were higher than normal, in part because of duplicate funding for COVID expenses provided by the federal government or challenges in hiring during COVID. So those turnbacks over 250,000 came from DPW, the reserve fund that the Finance Committee oversees, the Board of Health, Health Insurance, Energy, and Police. Here is a summary of the FY21 free cash usage. So the FY21 free cash was certified at 9.72 million, and then expenses, usages during the fall town meeting in 2020, totaling 1.695 million, were subtracted, as well as the spring town meeting 21 free cash usage summarized here. So when you combine these, the total is 2.36 million, and our unappropriated free cash balance for FY21 is 7.36 million. We can look at this usage in context of historical usage and totals of free cash. So going back to FY19, the combination of the blue, red, and green is our starting point, the certified free cash value. And the amount showed in red is what was spent at fall town meeting, and in green, spring town meeting. And this has grown in FY20, FY21, and FY22. We have quite a large free cash that has been certified at 13.4 million. But the fall town meeting and spring town meeting usage is growing, and tonight is proposed 1.7 million usage of that free cash. Next, moving on to the FY21 Reserve Fund summary. We started the year at 400K of reserve fund funds, and it was supplemented by $525,000 just for COVID mitigation and uncertainties of expenses that would come. The town's usage turned out to be typical $399,000, and we turned back $526,000. And here's a summary of those approved usages voted by the Finance Committee. Now I'll summarize the FY21 enterprise funds. So enterprise funds are like small businesses. They're more transparent. You can see the revenues in and the expenditures
Recording
out.
stopped.
The balance, although there's some supplements from the town's general
Recording
funds.
in progress.
So on the left, we see the water and sewer funds. The revenues were $8.24 million, representing a 52% increase from FY20, in no small part because FY20 had lots of rain when compared to FY21, and perhaps people were at home more, taking care of their gardens. The transfers in were $4.69 million and the expenditures $9.7 million. The retained earnings was $1.88 million, and expressed as a percentage of revenues and transfers in is 14.58%. On the recreation side, the revenues came in at $1.09 million, which as expected was a decrease from FY20 of 24%. Because of COVID-related restrictions in the number of children that could be admitted to programs, and space utilization because the rec department was not able to use the school buildings as they had in the past. The transfers in were $402,000, and the expenditures, $987,000, represent a 40% decrease from FY20. So the not so new recreation director and his staff should be commended for reducing expenditures. Also, the retained earnings of $245,000 represent a 16.5% of revenues and the transfers in. Next, I'll show you a summary of the additional COVID funds that the town has received or is planning to receive in the next year or so. Most of the town's COVID-related costs have been covered, and there is a minimal impact on the town's operating budget. So just to summarize, to date, half of the ARPA funding has been received. That's the America Recovery Act. And the use of these funds will be discussed at upcoming select board meetings. The CARES Act funds, $2 million, is to be spent by the end of the year. I believe most, if not all of that, has been allocated. For the FEMA funds, we've received $144,000 to date, and we are expecting $167,000 for 2 remaining projects. The bulk of that funding is to cover COVID testing. The Coronavirus Relief Fund of $100.6 million was received by the schools, as were the 3 ESSER grants. And that can be used, the ESSER grants can be used until the end of fiscal year 24. And the schools have budgeted the ESSER 1 and 2 funds and are still planning how to expense the ESSER 3 funds. So in sum, the town has received or is expecting to receive a total of $11.2 million, which has definitely offset the impact of the COVID expenses. So in summary, the town is in a strong financial position. The operating reserves is 14.35% of the revenue transfers in. This will be reduced to 13% if the full 1.7 million of the warrant articles pass tonight and in the following nights of town meeting. The town has received 11.2 million of funding to offset COVID-related expenses. I advise the town meeting members to consider a conservative approach to using the excess free cash that we now have. There are the known expenses that are coming, the overrides, the borrowing for schools, for the new Lynch, for the new Morocco, for the central office relocation, for the transfer station, and for a general operating override that is lurking on the horizon, as well as the OPEB and pension liabilities that the town faces. There's also unknown expenses. So we have quite a few contract negotiations in the works. And we were surprised the last time around by how large the percentage increases were. And that has a significant impact on the town's finances. There's also Washington Street, as you will discuss tonight, and how much will be borrowed and used and recovered from the sale of that property. So one idea is to establish an override stabilization fund, and this has been suggested by select board members, and I know the town manager's office is looking into the feasibility of doing this. This would reduce the amounts borrowed to lessen the burden on the taxpayers of upcoming overrides. And in my last word of advice is for town meeting members to really ask if this expense is needed now before spending. At one of our finance committee meetings, a good point was raised that there's not only the expense of doing something, but the expense of not doing it. So please ask yourself, could this be postponed? Do we have the full picture and all the needed information to make the best financial and overall decision for the town? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Blackwell. Moving on for the report of the school committee, Ms. Karen Mariama Bolognese, Chair of the School Committee. IT Director will be sharing a video with you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Mariama Bolognese, Chair of the Winchester School Committee.
And I'm Michelle Bergstrom, Vice Chair.
I'd also like to welcome Dr. Frank Hackett, who brings to Winchester his vast experience as a superintendent and with MSBA projects, his steady leadership, and a strong and innovative team that has been leading the charge on our operations, communications, website, technology, finance, and strategic planning.
We've come a long way towards more normalcy in fall 2021 compared to last year, when we opened in hybrid and remote models in the midst of the pandemic. The protocols we've put in place have been our North Star for us this year too, with masks for pre-K to 12th grades inside our school buildings, physical distancing, and staying home when sick. For example, with the dedication of our nurses led by Jen Markham and community member Jess Pfefferman, we are one of the first in the state to implement the Test and Stay program, which has helped students and staff stay in school this year. We've also rolled out weekly safety checks or surveillance testing across 3rd through 12th grades. Thanks to town meeting, we were able to fund the Dean of Student Life, K-5 Social Emotional Learning Coach, nurse, and Operations and Planning Project Manager. These positions have been critical in helping our students return to school, some after more than 18 months away from our buildings, and also for putting into place the infrastructure to run our schools smoothly and efficiently. Many factors still remain uncertain though.
Last spring, with tuition deadlines looming for private school and uncertainty around public school, many Winchester families chose private or other options for their children. We must always plan for the number of students we believe will come, though, and hire the appropriate number of staff to support them. Will these students come back? We believe they will, now that public schools have indeed opened fully and met the challenges of the pandemic head on. Our administration is doing a deep dive into enrollment trends over the last few years to understand if they are an aberration from the pandemic or a more long-term phenomenon. Looking ahead, 40B projects, including 96 units at Cambridge Street and 147 units at River Street, are gaining steam as they broke ground in fall 21 and are targeted for completion in 14 to 18 months in 23. This will mean that the first students from any grade could be coming our way in FY23. So we must begin to prepare now in terms of hiring and where to put the students. All our union contracts are up for negotiation this year, and staffing is by far the largest driver of our budget. The COVID pandemic continues to affect our expenses for special education tuition, transportation, and professional services. These are highly variable each year and impact our budget significantly. Federal funding has helped us supply PPE, air purifiers, nursing help, and a one-year part-time COVID coordinator. But this is limited, specific to certain items, and time-bound. We are expecting another infusion from our share of incoming funding to the town, which will be phased in over the next year.
We appreciate town meeting's funding of the Morocco Life Extension Plan. This funds repairs for Morocco's roof, electrical, plumbing systems, and boilers, which are already installed. These improvements will help extend the building until we can replace it. Now we'll talk about how some of our buildings are tied together.
For Lynch, the MSBA has identified a short list of design teams, which will be finalized this November. We will then move toward developing the most appropriate design of the space at the most affordable cost in 22. We target having this MSBA-approved design ready to update you next fall. We've heard loud and clear the need for swing space for Lynch from the candidates. Parkhurst has a history of serving that role for the Vincent Owen and Ambrose rebuilds. Now that the elevator there is complete, the lower level of the building is finally accessible, and we were able to move 4 pre-K classes in from Lynch this year. With both floors available, this is a clear option for swing space for Lynch construction for 2 years. Central office will need to move out of Parkhurst, though, to free up the space they currently occupy. We have completed the study that you funded in 2018 of the carriage house option that could be this home. In Article 28, we'll seek your approval to move ahead with the design development phase for the carriage house. Just one more step toward a permanent home for central office and freeing up space to use all our buildings for what they were designed for, to educate our children.
In conclusion, we're grateful that our staff and students are back this year in school, clubs, and sports. With vaccines around the corner for our youngest learners and support from our community, we're looking forward to treasured milestones to celebrate together. Thank you, Town Meeting.
Thank you very much. It was nice to see you, Ms. Bergstrom. Moving that the remainder of the reports, along with the ones just shared, are now on file and available on the website at winchester.us. Moving on to Article 3, which is on page 4 of your blue booklet. It is moved and seconded that the town approve Article 3 as printed in the warrant. Seeing that there are no questions on it, are you ready for the question? A vote of the majority of the members present is required. The question is going to be on your screen and on your V-Voter screen. Please turn your attention to your V-Voter and select yes if you are in favor and no if you are opposed. And this is on hearing from the planning board and taking their report. 45 seconds. There's a point of order. Mr. Diabgirius from Precinct 8.
Madam Moderator, I just wanted to point out I was prepared to present this article live. Am I out of sequence here?
Nope, not yet. They need to vote to accept your report, and then you are.
Okay, I apologize.
No, it's all right. It's kind of confusing with the reports. One moment. With 148 voting in the affirmative, 2 voting in the negative, the affirmative have it. And the motion is adopted. One moment, I'm going to reread it again. 148 in the affirmative and 2 in the negative. You're welcome. Thank you. For the report of the Planning Board, Mr. Diab-Girius, Chair of the Planning Board.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I guess I will wait until my presentation is shared.
It'll be one moment.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good evening, town meeting members and Winchester residents. I am Diab-Girius, Chair of the Planning Board, and I am happy to present our semi-annual report to town meeting. Next slide, please. Before I get into the report, I would like to thank all of the people who make it possible for the Planning Board to get its job done. Big shout out to Suzanne Gill, our administrative assistant, Nancy Polcari, our recording secretary, everyone in the engineering and building departments, as well as design review committee, historical commission, and our town councils from Anderson Krieger. Thank you all very much. Next slide, please. The last 6 months saw further personnel changes on the planning board. Cheryl Wolf was appointed to fill the position vacated by Heather Von Mering after she was elected town moderator. Heather Hannon left us in late this summer, and Kurt Spring was appointed to fill that seat. We are sad to see Heather go and wish her well in her future endeavors. Saley Dale and E. Ching Scott continue on the board. Next slide, please. So what you see before you are the current multi-unit projects which are in the pipeline in the town of Winchester. 735 Main Street was approved several years ago, but is still under appeal. 654 Main Street, better known as Hell's Hardware, is a mixed-use 36-unit project, which was approved earlier this year and is now under appeal. 416 Cambridge Street is a 96-unit 40B project, which was under appeal, but has recently been permitted and is proceeding. 19 to 35 River Street is a 147-unit 40B project, which has recently been permitted and is proceeding. 10 Converse Street is a 60-unit mixed-use project in the Center Business District, which has recently been submitted to the Planning Board, which is the special permit granting authority for the Center Business District. Our current subsidized housing inventory stands at 4.9% out of a required 10%. As long as we are below that 10% and are not in safe harbor, 40B projects may not be denied. To achieve and maintain safe harbor for a year, we must permit at least 40 units per year. We are currently in safe harbor until the end of next March, but there are not sufficient projects in the pipeline to extend it, and it will expire. Note that projects which are rental may count all of their units towards the inventory, even if not all of those units are affordable. This significantly undercounts the number of units that we actually need. According to our housing production and master plans, we require approximately 700 actual affordable units to meet the need for affordable housing for current Winchester residents. Next slide, please. One back, please. Thank you. In the spring of 2020, town meeting provided funding to the planning board to undertake a study of the North Main Street corridor to understand development challenges, opportunities, and possibilities. The planning board contracted with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which provided a supplemental grant to fully fund the study. Next slide, please. As we reported to the Springtown meeting, the North Main Street study began earlier this year. In addition to holding 2 public forums and additional surveys, the study included detailed analyses of existing conditions and development potential. The study deliverables include an encompassing vision for the corridor, as well as design guidelines and suggested zoning changes. Next slide, please. The existing conditions analyses provide detailed information on each lot in the 2 zoning districts which comprise the corridor. What you see before you is one example of that analysis, which shows on which lots the land value is greater than the building value. The green is where the land value is higher, the red where the building value is higher. This is one indicator of the increased possibility of near-term development. Next slide, please. This graphic provides insight into potential for properties to change. It is based on a number of inputs, such as the property and building values, the existing type of the structure, its historical importance, the existing use, etc. All of these analyses will be available in the final published report. Next slide, please. The study also provides a series of suggested changes to the existing zoning bylaws for general business districts 2 and 3, which cover North Main Street. The suggestions cover a variety of elements and range from minor to major impacts. Please note that the final form of any zoning changes will be the results of discussions with the community about what changes are appropriate and how to best balance competing needs and visions. The report suggestions provide a springboard for discussion as well as a palette of possibilities, but they do not represent any set policy direction of the planning board. Next slide, please. The next steps in our work on the North Main Street corridor are to take the recommendations of the final report, which is due this month, and bring them forward to the community through discussion and proposed zoning changes and design recommendations. We are hoping to bring these to town meeting next fall. Next slide, please. This past spring, town meeting funded a similar study to evaluate development possibilities in the Holton Street, Cross Street area. We are at the very earliest stages of this. We're drawing up a list of consultants from which to choose one to undertake the study. If the study has the same duration as that of North Main Street, we expect to see it complete by this time next year. Next slide, please. I'd like to highlight a couple of other activities that the planning board and department undertook these last few months. Town planner Brian Sekeli facilitated the Waterfield Lot Task Force, as well as supporting it behind the scenes with other town staff and consultants. There was a prodigious amount of work that was accomplished in a very short amount of time, and we'd like to thank Brian for all of his efforts on that. Earlier this, I guess it would be late spring, early summer, Brian and I participated in the Network for Social Justice Housing Equity Forum, where we discussed the origins of zoning and housing policy, their roots in racial and ethnic discrimination, and opportunities and efforts to provide equitable access to housing. Next slide, please. To follow up, these are our plans for the next 6 months. As mentioned, we're going to finish up the North Main Street study with an eye towards bringing enhanced zoning and design guidelines to the town meeting. Begin the Holton Street area study with an eye for housing and economic development. Collaborate with other town boards and committees to cooperatively prioritize master plan strategies and begin their implementation. And begin to explore different options for improving housing equity for historically underserved populations. One of our first discussions will revolve around zoning to allow accessory dwelling units. And I thank you very much for your time and attention. Have a great evening. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Girius. The report just shared by the Planning Board is now on file and will be available on the town's website. Moving on to Article 4 on page 5 of your blue booklet. There are 2 revisions of this. If you go to section 8.1.2 floodplain district boundaries. On the third line, there's the word dated. It is being modified to effective. And again, the word dated is in the second to last line of the same section, 8.12, and that is being changed to effective.
We're going to project that on the screen, Heather.
Okay, we will be putting it up on the screen on Zoom, and then also it will be also on your vVoter screen as well. So it's moved and seconded that the town approve Article 4 as revised and printed in the warrant. Proponent of the motion speaking will be Mr. Brian Zakelli. He is the town planner for the Winchester Planning Department.
Good evening and thank you, Madam Moderator. Can everyone see my beautiful picture here of the town hall?
It's wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Zakelli.
Right. So good evening, town meeting. Right now we're going to be talking about Article 4, the Massachusetts 2020 update to the floodplain bylaw. The objective here is to comply with the new National Flood Insurance Program requirements so that Winchester residents can receive flood insurance. The floodplain bylaw was updated in 2020, and we are just trying to reflect that. So the floodplain bylaw was originally passed in 1968 through the National Flood Insurance Act. This act offered flood disaster relief in the form of insurance if the communities adopted and enforced these minimum National Flood Insurance Program requirements. We have done so since that time. In 2020, there have been state and federal floodplain requirements for construction that have been updated. Below here are a number of things that have been updated, such as technical data submissions, what constitutes a permanent construction, and several other definitions have been updated through this 2020 floodplain bylaw, and we will be reflecting those in ours. So the main goal here specifically is to reference existing regulations so that we can ensure that projects have been reviewed appropriately and that communities do not unknowingly allow deviations that would prevent homeowners the ability to acquire flood insurance. So again, these are flood insurance requirements that we have to do in order to get insurance, and we are just updating those. I'm sorry here. So the actual motion is to amend section 8.1 and references to section 8.1 in the definition sections. The change that was just noted by the moderator are here, and we are, this is different from your motion booklet. This is based upon recent public feedback and subsequent DCR and legal review for the planning board to vote to amend this article to change how maps are referenced from the word dated to the word effective. And that is all I have for this motion. Thank you. Back to you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much. I want to remind town meeting members that if you raise your hand, there's no way that we can support you. You need to use the Q&A to reach out to our deputy moderator so they can support you. If it's a parliamentary procedure issue, that is where you would use the point of order on your vVoter. I also want to, we received a question that I want to make sure that all town meeting members know. When you vote, there are notes of vacant members in the voting that's using that tally. Those are not vacant seats. Those are actually the newly voted members of each precinct. So a handful of precincts had vacancies and they elected new members very recently, and they are filling those vacant seats. And we do have their names and they are official members of town meeting. So going on at this time, for town meetings consideration, we go to boards or committees to give their recommendation. At this time, boards and committees who would like to speak to provide their recommendation to town meeting for the consideration, you can use this request to speak button at this time. I believe that Ms. Susan Verdicchio, Chair of the Select Board, would like to speak and provide a recommendation on behalf of the Select Board. We're elevating you right now, Mrs. Verdicchio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you. Different process this time. The select board voted to recommend favorable action.
Thank you so much. Do we have a recommendation from FinCom?
Hi, yes, FinCom did not vote on this article as we did not see a clear financial impact.
Thank you very much, Dr. Blackwell. At this time, seeing no other chairs of boards or committees rise to request to speak, town meeting members, you can please use your request to speak button at this time at the corner of your V voter. To our new members of town meeting, you are welcome to share your perspective and insight and information you may have, given that is confined to the motion before you. You're also welcome to ask questions of staff, legal, and boards and committees. Everything is to be addressed through me. As a reminder, please address me as Madam Moderator. And once I call upon you by the name provided on your V voter system, please let me know how you like me to address you going forward. I welcome you correcting me, and as I may not get your name correct the first time or the second, maybe not even the third, I will try my best. And Sarah, Precinct 1.
Hi, everybody. This is Ann Sarah from Precinct 1, and you can address me as Ann Sarah from Precinct 1. I want to thank everybody today who got a whole flurry of emails from me nitpicking about the language of this motion. I submitted different language, which was approved by DCR, by our state at after 5 today. The language before you right now is a little different than the one that I submitted. It's fine, but I think that the first mention of FPOD should be changed so that, because FPOD is undefined, and it should be say floodplain overlay district and then parentheses FPOD. But other than that, this is fine. And thank you everybody again. This comes about because some language the original language was confusing about what panels were actually being referred to in the submitted language. I like the wording that I submitted better, but this is okay. I also just wanted to say that part of the reason why this was confusing is that there are preliminary revisions of the flood model available right now. And that means that circa, I don't know, 21, 22, we're going to be having a new floodplain boundary. And now is the time, if you live near a floodplain boundary, that you would be able to comment on it. So I think that these new floodplain maps, the preliminary ones, really need to be up at the town website. They aren't. For anybody who lives near the floodplain boundary and they're worried about it, you can shoot me a line at ansarah.winchester@gmail.com, and I'll help you determine the effect on your property until the town has some better method of addressing the change. Thank you again to everybody who sat through my nitpicking about this over the weekend. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other members rise to request to speak, a vote of 2/3 of the members present is required. Please turn your attention to your V voter screen and select yes if you are in favor and no if you are not. We will provide you 45 seconds to navigate through all the screens and cast your votes. As a reminder, a gray box will appear that states your vote is received. We are moving that the town approve Article 4 as revised and printed in your warrant article, your warrant booklet. There are 153 in the affirmative and 2 in the negative. There are 2/3 in the affirmative and the motion is adopted. Moving to page 13, Article 5 of your Town of Winchester 2021 Fall Town Meeting Motion Booklet, the blue book. It is moved and seconded that the town approve Article 5 as printed in the warrant booklet. Proponent of the motion is Mr. Diabgerius of the Planning Board.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I will once more wait for my presentation to be shared. And thank you very much. Good evening, town meeting. I am delighted to present to you Article 5, a proposal by the Planning Board excuse me, to update the definition of story half, better known as the half story. Next slide, please. So what are the objectives of this motion? They are to clarify the existing wording so that it is less confusing and add a quantitative guideline so that a half story as built is more in harmony with the size and scale of its surrounding built environment. Next slide, please. The current definition of half story has caused some confusion over the years. It's just awkwardly written. It is not the worst compared to similar definitions by other municipalities, but even seasoned architects have had to take a second look at it to make sure they get it right. More importantly, it doesn't constrain the massing of a half story so that it actually resembles a half story. We have seen a number of designs which technically meet the definition, but do not reflect the common sense notion of a half story, appearing to be quite a bit larger. This new language that we propose is an incremental improvement and seeks to link the massing of the half story to that of the lower floors to maintain context. It is a minimally invasive change to the zoning bylaws. It provides an additional tool with which to encourage contextually sensitive massing, but we have no illusions that it is a silver bullet. Before drafting the new language, we studied how nearby municipalities approach this issue. What we found is that the approach we outline here is actually quite common with some minor variations. Next slide, please. So what you see before you right now is the existing definition. It's quite short, but I want to point out the confusing bit, which is that it uses the phrase interior faces of the walls, but it actually doesn't define which walls it is referring to. Next slide, please. Now, here is the problem I alluded to before about the definition not constraining massing. This illustration shows two different roof configurations for this building. Both of them would meet our current definition of a half story. The taller of them, pointed at by the red arrow, is clearly not a half story. It's just too big. Next slide, please. So here's our new definition, which now has two parts. The first part clarifies the original language, and the definition now explicitly indicates that it is the interior faces of the exterior walls that we were concerned about, which were not defined previously. This reflects the definition as it has been historically interpreted by the building department, so this is not a change. Next slide, please. The second part adds a limit relative to the story below of the amount of floor area, which is a clear height of 7 feet or more. And I'll explain that a bit a bit more in the following slides. Next slide, please. So this figure indicates, or illustrates rather, which portion of an upper story is subject to the new constraint. Here we have a multi-story house. The roof meets the first part of the definition because it intersects the internal faces of two exterior walls less than 3 feet above the floor. To meet the second part of the new definition, we need to determine how much of the upper story has a clear height of 7 feet or more. And you see there, horizontal lines indicate a height of 7 feet above the floor. And the polka dotted area outlined in red is the part of the third floor which has a clear height of 7 feet or more. The shaded parts have a height less than 7 feet and are not counted. Next slide, please. So here's what it looks like if we look at it from above. On the left is the upper story. The dashed outline to its left is the part of the floor below which it doesn't cover. Maybe it's in addition to the original house. The non-shaded portion inside the box is the area which has a clear height of greater than 7 feet. We designate that as X. In this house, there is a dormer, which may provide clearance, for instance, for a staircase coming up to this story. And the dormer provides a clearance of 7 feet or more, so it is included. On the right is the outline of the second floor. This is the floor beneath the one on the left, and this provides the floor area we are comparing to, and we're going to designate that as Y. And the new definition says that in order for this to meet the definition of half story, the ratio of X to Y has to be less than 0.65. As long as X is less than 65% of Y, the story will meet the definition of half story. The designer can adjust the slope of the roof to decrease the value of X and bring the design into compliance if necessary. Next slide, please. Earlier, I mentioned that we had looked at other municipalities' zoning bylaws, and these 5 municipalities have similar constraints on half stories. They define some amount of floor area, some ratio of floor area in the half story to another story, either itself or the full area of that story or to the story below. So when we look at the height that triggers this, the constraint, a majority have chosen 7 feet or above for their clear height. Arlington has 7 foot 3 inches, so we are essentially we're meeting that, our communal standard. A larger majority have actually chosen a more restrictive constraint than we have proposed, meaning that they would require that you have less of that story be above 7 feet. We felt that a more relaxed limit was appropriate given that staircases will require clearance and are not usually usable space. And they would be counted in that denominator X if they had more than 7 feet of headroom. So thank you very much for your attention, and we would appreciate your support for this article.
Thank you. Further on the question, do we have recommendation for town meeting's consideration from any boards or committees? Please use the request to speak button on the V voter or the Q&A if you are not a town meeting member to the boards and committee representatives. Recommendation of the select board by Ms. Susan Verdicchio.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The select board voted to recommend favorable action on this.
Thank you. Recommendation from FinCom, Chair Dr. Blackwell.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. FinCom did not vote. We did not see a clear financial impact of this article.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other boards or committee chairs rise to speak on the motion, I will now be turning to opening it up to debate. Further on the motion, Anthony Conti of Precinct 2.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would urge town meeting to oppose this change for the following reason. We hear a lot of talk about the need to have affordable housing. What this proposal would do would be to reduce the volume of space that can be constructed on any particular property, and as a result, make housing less affordable. I have an example in my precinct on Holland Street, a house that was recently built there. It's a beautiful two-family house that would not be able to be the size that it is if this proposal had been in effect, because it would have reduced the upper story in the half, what's termed a half story, substantially reducing the ability to have an additional room on each side of the two-family house. And for that reason, I would urge town meeting to oppose this proposal. If we're in favor of affordable housing, we should be supportive of efforts that make it possible to actually build affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the question, Ann Sarah, Precinct 1.
Hi, Mr. Conti and I both oppose this article, but for very different reasons. I oppose it because it actually sanctions very, very tall top stories. It's very easy to get a 15 to 18 and even higher story, even higher amount of a top floor that is much, much taller than the other floors on a house. And I think it was supposed to be limiting the mass of the top story, and it does not. It doesn't accomplish that. One way to see that is to think of a 10 by 10 square, and then think 8 by 8 squares is 64%. So you could have almost all of the area of the house be 7 feet tall. It just doesn't. And then on top of that, have it crowned under a sloping rooftop. So it winds up being 15 feet tall. It's very, very tall. The redefinition of story half is tightly related to many other definitions in our bylaw, including height, basement, cellar, mean grade, mean proposed grade, mean existing grade, interior of wall area. And what's really important here is that a story half, what we really need in our definition, is something that will address the thousands of buildings in Winchester that are split levels and are right now an indeterminate number of stories because they're split level. This is actually trying to redefine attic, not story half. And I admit that that's a problem with our existing code, but it should be corrected. It doesn't achieve the objective, and it also adds confusion. Why? Because because this definition is being put, there's a restriction on a dimensional requirement here that's being put into the definition section, and it doesn't belong there. It belongs in the dimensional requirements section. So if you put this sort of dimensional requirement in the definition, it's going to be missed, and it's going to cause a lot of confusion for the building department and for people who are trying to assess whether or not a building meets code, like the ZBA or any of the neighbors. So also tonight, Diab says that they didn't want to include the staircase, and that's why they went with 65%. But then they said that the objective was to limit mass. So are you trying to limit mass, or are you trying to do something with living area? Just not very well thought through. So because this adds confusion, it sanctions very, very tall top stories. It doesn't really address what we need in the zoning bylaw. And finally, it tries to redefine story half to really be story 65%. I am opposing this, and I encourage everyone to vote no on it. But I do appreciate that the planning board did something. They saw a problem and they tried to correct it, even if incrementally, and that's great. Keep trying to do that. It's just that this particular article doesn't cut it. Thanks.
Thank you. A member of town meeting has moved the vote. I'm going to find it out of order, as we have not heard from more than only 2 members of town meeting, and there's only one currently in line. So I'm going to allow Dorothy Simboli of Precinct 6 further on the motion.
Hi, thank you, Madam Moderator. I would agree with Ann Sarah on this. She brought up some excellent points. And I do really appreciate the fact that the planning board put some time and effort into drafting this and proposing it. But I think we really need to go back and take a look at it and see how this is going to play out in reality. And are we going to be allowing, in essence, a third floor of living space in certain circumstances? And I think if we were to go back and revisit this and redraft it, I would like to see maybe a more conservative approach with some of those, with the communities that have taken a more conservative approach with regard to the definition of a story half. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Since I spoke, we have had 2 more members request to speak. Next is Russell Gay of Precinct 8.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just wanted to disagree with the last 3 town meeting members that the definition of a half story and what Mr. Jarius was trying to do was to clarify, as with all other building codes, is to give guidance to what can and cannot be built with the XY equation. I don't see all of the difficulty with this definition. I thought that it was kind of something that was to give guidance when it came to a third story or a half story. Thank you.
Thank you. I see, Deanne Jarius of Precinct 8, that you have requested to speak. As you are the last speaker in line, I will allow you the opportunity to provide closing comments before we go to vote.
Okay, thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm going to be speaking, if it may, as chair in response to some of the comments. So one of the things we have to acknowledge is that we currently have a zoning bylaw which allows rather tall houses. So if this does not change the height of the house, that is defined by the zoning bylaws. And so it does not actually increase the height of a house as it could presently be built. So that will not change. As to the concerns about having tall stories which are larger than stories below, one of the things that we looked at is the style of houses which are currently available or that have been built historically and currently in Winchester. I live, for example, in a 1995 Queen Anne. It's a small house. It's actually really, well, it's not tiny, but it's small. But the attic is actually quite a bit taller than the floors below it because the roof is rather steep. And so we did not want to introduce something which would restrict the architectural designs, because some homes do have tall upper stories, and we don't want to preclude people from being able to build those. So those are the 2 things I wanted to say in response to some of the comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A vote of 2/3 of the members present is required. The question is going to be on your V-Voter screen in a moment and is printed in your motion booklet on page 13. Please turn your attention to V-Voter and select yes if you are in favor and no if you're opposed. 45 seconds. Thank you. sorry, doing the math. All right. So there are 97 in the affirmative and 54 in the negative. There are 2/3 with a total of 151. 101 needed to pass. The negative has it and the motion is lost. We will be scrolling through the precinct so everyone can see your votes. All right, thank you, town meeting. So just so you know, that's why we don't scroll on every vote. We scroll on the ones that are more closer because it does suck time out of our time to hear and debate. I wanted to move to Article 6 real quickly, and then we will be taking a 5-minute break thereafter. Article 6 is indefinitely postponed. It is moved and seconded that the town indefinitely postpone Article 6. If you can move to your V voter, we'll take a motion, we'll take a vote to indefinitely postpone Article 6. Those who would like to indefinitely postpone it? Yes. If you don't, no. Thank you. There are 144 in the affirmative and 11 in the negative. The affirmative has it and the motion is adopted. We'll be moving onward next to Article 7 after a 5-minute break. We will meet you all back here at 9:10. We will keep the Zoom open, cameras turned off during that break, and enjoy, if for all those who got their Girl Scouts delivered to them, enjoy your treats. See you soon.
All right, back on here. A little momentary mic being off. which might be good for some people. I'm Alan Iden. Welcome to our coverage of the Winchester's Fall Town Meeting first session here, November 1st, being conducted here at the WinCam Studios. So the town meeting is on a break, so let's recap what we've seen so far. We're a little late. There were some technical difficulties. Town meeting was supposed to start at 7 o'clock. We did not actually start until about 7:40. It was called to order at 7:40. We had a video of the Boy Scouts raising the flag with the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance. And what we have tonight is a consent agenda of 11 articles where no debate is anticipated. It is allowed if 5 voters can request an article being removed from the consent agenda, but it does move things through a little more quickly where these 11 articles are not considered to be controversial. So as usual, we moved into Article 1, which is the report of the town officers. We heard first from Beth Rudolph, who is the acting town manager and has moved from the town engineer's position. As of October 2nd, she said she referred to some of the COVID-19 impacts and thanking all the town boards and committees and employees who have got us through this pandemic, or not completely through yet, obviously, but working our way through it. She said Dr. Frank Hackett has been named interim school superintendent, and the results of the census show that the Winchester population increased 6.6% to 22,970 from the last census in 2010. She said the town is in healthy financial condition. The operating reserves are at 14.4%, where the goal is to be greater than 10%. The challenges are school enrollment, as always, bargaining agreements, health insurance, and energy costs. She said the Swanton Street Bridge project, which has kept that closed all summer and was delayed by the amount of rain we had this summer, is scheduled to be completed late this month. She listed some of the water and sewer projects that are ongoing, including an article coming up on the North Reservoir Dam. Transportation projects she touched on were the reconstruction of the intersection of Church and Waterfield, parking issues, and the MBTA reconstruction of the train station, which is supposed to start late this year or early next year. She commented on the 240B projects currently about to begin construction, one on Cambridge Street and another one on River Street. Dr. Megan Blackwell, the chair of the Finance Committee, reported next. She said the revenues were higher than expected. They were up 20%, and the expenses were only up 33.6% over the projections. Federal CARES funding is coming, and the town is in a strong financial position. But she advised establishing an override stabilization fund and conservative spending by town meeting. Karen Bolanese, the chair of the school committee, again mentioned the interim superintendent, Frank Hackett. She talked about fall back to school, quote unquote, and the COVID protocols currently in place, and looking for some of the students who were not in public schools because of the pandemic to return to public schools. But there's concern growing over the enrollment from the Cambridge Street and River Street projects, potential enrollment increases from those two projects. That was Article 1, and of course that was passed just to receive the reports. And there are various other town board reports that are posted on the town's website. Article 3 was the Planning Board report. Diabjarius talked about the multi-unit projects in development, which are the Fells Hardware Project, 735 Main Street at the corner of Skillings, 416 Cambridge Street across from Whole Foods, the River Street project, and Converse Place, which has come before the Planning Board. They said the town will lose safe harbor status in March 2022 unless more affordable units are permitted. There's a North Main Street study underway, and that shows the potentials for changes from Skillings Road to the Woburn line on Main Street. The final report is due this month. Recommendations will go before town meeting in fall of 2022. Holton Street study is underway, also to be reported to the fall town meeting in 2022. That was passed, received and passed. Article 4, floodplain zoning revisions. We heard from Brian Zaleski, who is the town planner, to allow residents to obtain, these are changes to the maps that will allow residents to obtain flood insurance. That was passed. Article 5, half-story revisions, half-story zoning revisions. We're clarifying, looks like we're going back to town meeting. I'll be back with a recap at the conclusion of the meeting.
Welcome back, town meeting members. We are moving to page 21, Article 7 of your blue booklets. It is moved and seconded that the town approve Article 7 as printed in the warrant. The proponent of the motion for Article 7 is Ms. Susan Verdicchio, Chair of the Select Board.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Since this is a wording change, if at some point you could have that up on the screen, just the wording, which is in the article, that would be helpful.
Yep, we'll share that in one moment.
Okay, so thank you. This article is based on two sets of concerns. The first one from recent school superintendents about the safety and security issues raised by holding townwide voting in elementary and middle school buildings while school is in session and students are present. Also worries about pedestrian, bike, and car traffic safety in the school parking lots. In the fall, for statewide elections, the school department can schedule teacher professional days, which are no school days for students. But for the annual town election in late March, that's almost impossible due to parent-teacher conferences that month and standardized testing later on in the spring. And by that time of the year, there usually have been some snow days as well. Turning to the second set of concerns, over the past few years, the town clerk has been alerting the select board to the need for polling places to have robust technology, good, reliable Wi-Fi as the voting records are migrating from paper to electronic form. And helping poll workers to use the technology and doing any troubleshooting that comes up is difficult for her and her staff in 4 locations. The town clerk has considered the merits of consolidating the town voting to one location, and the most obvious one would be the large and recently renovated high school, in addition to having the newest technology and ventilation or HVAC systems. The building is totally handicap accessible and has ample parking just right around the building. Mary Ellen Lannon and School Superintendent Hackett have had some discussions, and the schools would be agreeable to holding the March election at the high school, and a Saturday would work the best. A number of other towns in the Commonwealth hold their annual town elections on Saturdays, including Arlington, Bedford, Burlington, and Wilmington close by, and amending the bylaw to allow the select board to shift the annual election to Saturday by a vote taken by December 1st of the previous year would allow the town the flexibility to try this. So thank you for your consideration. And I believe the school committee chair, Karen Mariamu Bolognese, Superintendent Hackett, and town clerk, Mary Ellen Lannon are available to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Further on the question, do we have recommendations for town meetings consideration from boards and committees? Please use your vVoter request Q&A to let me know. Dr. Blackwell of FinCom.
The Finance Committee did vote on this article, and 8 were in favor, 0 opposed, and 3 abstained.
Thank you very much. Further on the question, Chair of the School Committee, Karen Mariama Bolognese, Precinct 6.
Hi, thank you very much. This is Karen Mariama Bolognese, and the school committee had voted unanimously 5-0 in support of this, as our experience in schools has been that having the polling locations in the schools during the school day can be disruptive to the school building, and also with the instructional spaces within the school, and then with traffic concerns, and with building security.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other chair or of any board or commission rise to request to speak, we are going to move onward to town meeting members. At this time, please use your speak on the motion button on your vVoter to notify me that you'd speak. I will be going in order of the timestamps. First on the question, Anthony Conti, Precinct 2.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I love the idea of having the polling place all in one location at the high school. It's a perfect location for it, lots of parking, as has been indicated. My only concern is the possibility that the election would be held on the second to last Saturday in March, which March elections are always a little problematical because of the weather. And the earlier you have an election, the more likely it is that they're going to have bad weather, which could hurt turnout. And not to mention all of the poor poll workers who have to stand out with those signs in front of the polling places. So I wonder why, what is the necessity of having the second Saturday in March as an option, excuse me, the second to last Saturday in March as an option instead of having it on the last Saturday in March. And I wonder if somebody could answer that question for me and relieve my concerns.
Thank you very much. Right now, we're having problems with my audio. Give me 1 second, and then I will direct your question. One moment. Is that better, town meeting members? If so, can you let the deputy moderator know in the Q&A? Thank you so much for your patience. Sorry, Mr. Conti. I will be directing your question to the proponent of the chair of the select board. I guess everyone loves my audio. So I will be directing your question to Susan Verdicchio. Ms. Verdicchio, would you be able to provide insight into the second versus last Saturday?
Yes, actually, our town council, in reviewing this proposal last year, noted that in some years, the last Saturday in March is the Saturday before the Easter Sunday for Roman Catholic and Protestant believers, and that's an important religious holiday, and we didn't want to cause any conflict or lack of respect for the holiday. And it's not on the holiday, of course. Easter is on a Sunday, but we just felt it would be just more respectful to change that and go with the second to last Saturday.
Thank you. Further on the question, Dr. John Miller, Precinct 6.
Yeah, I just had just one comment. I echo what Susan Verdicchio just said. I think sometimes at the end of March, there could be a big drop off in voter turnout depending on what Saturday there is. So I understand the choice there. My question is a very specific one. Do you actually have data? Does anyone have data from these towns that are listed as to the voting turnout before and after the change from Tuesdays, which everyone in the country understands, to a Saturday?
Thank you very much. Chair of the Select Board, do you have data on the town's turnout after the changes taken place?
I wish I did. The Mass Municipal Association has data about what days various towns have their town elections, and it kind of runs a gamut. Some are in March, some are in April, some are in May. But there's no data about before and after. I know that Arlington has had Saturday elections for a long time, and I asked the people I know in the League of Women Voters if they could recall if there was any data about changing the date, and they didn't know that they didn't believe there was any. To some extent, some of us think that it might actually help turnout because in this day and age, a lot of people are still commuting long distances to work during work days, and parents with school-aged children, would both be available to keep an eye on the kids, or you could bring the kids to vote with you. I realize that Saturdays are also busy, but it's a more flexible schedule, more flexible busy. So I wish I had a better answer. I wish I could say, yes, it will improve voter turnout, but we just don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Russell Gay of Precinct 8. And prior to you speaking, I just wanted the town meeting to know that there are 2 more members in line, Roseanne Corrick of Precinct 5 and Dorothy Simboli of Precinct 6.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just wanted to echo the previous town meeting member, Dr. Miller's observation about data. And question is to Select Board Member, Ms. Radicchio, is there any data about volume voter on a Saturday in one spot in Winchester? If they were to look at numbers from, say, the last 3 or 4 or 5 years in Winchester, and you would consolidate all the voters onto one space, what would be the traffic, not just vehicle, but also foot traffic in the high school? Also, therefore, what would the hours be on the Saturday to accommodate if there was a large turnout? If there is regarding parking, if there wouldn't be enough space, if there would be overspill on the side streets. I'm just curious if there was some type of research with the weekend voting option. And the last thing is, in the language, it says this bylaw change would create an option. Does that mean it's both options, or would it just be one or the other? I do like the idea on a weekend for residents who have to work on the weekdays who might not be able to get back in time, but I just wanted to make those observations. Thank you.
On your first question about volume, we actually did get to try this during the referendum election in June, and it seemed to work quite well. At that time, the voting was in the dining commons or the cafeteria area that's right as you go in the front door of the high school. I think that was the feedback I heard, that the space was a little tight, but I understand that the town clerk was thinking of actually using the field house, which is very spacious. And as to your second question, I don't remember what that is now that I've answered your first question. I apologize.
The question would both options?
Oh, yes.
Vote on both days be
right.
available?
Yeah, no, sorry, I should have remembered that. No, the select board would vote, to pick either this next to last Saturday in March, or to stay with the usual typical last Tuesday, depending on the year. And if there were no vote, it would always be it would stay on the Tuesday.
Thank you. Further on the question, Roseanne Corrick, I see that you dropped out of line. I just want to double check to make sure it wasn't a technical issue.
that's fine. All of my questions have already been addressed by other speakers. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much. Further on the question, Dorothy Simboli of Precinct 6.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So I really think the voting on Saturday is a great idea. We saw what it was like during the referendum. It worked really well. I just wanted to point out, as much as I appreciate the fact that they took the Christian holiday Easter weekend into account, I agree with Tony Conti in terms of whether having it pushed in as late in March as possible. I also wanted to point out that private school vacation week typically runs through the second to last Saturday of March. It ends on that following Sunday. So while that doesn't represent a huge portion of the population of Winchester, it does, those parents and families are going to be absent if it is the second to last Saturday of March versus the last Saturday of March. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Further on the question, I believe Carol Savage.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
So I think that I'm in favor of this, giving the select board the option of keeping it as it has been on the last Tuesday, but giving this additional option. I just want to clarify, and I assume this is the case, but for town meeting and for anyone listening, that absentee voting would remain as it has been an option, regardless of whether it would be held on a Tuesday or a Saturday. And then also just to reinforce that if we were to move it to a Saturday, that making sure the public is made aware of that's going to be very important.
Thank you. I'm going to actually turn this over to the town clerk. Town clerk, could you please provide the information on the public outreach if the dates are changed, along with the first question, which was absentee voting will still be available if the dates are changed?
Yes. Hi, folks. Can you hear me? You can. Okay. Hi. Good evening. My name is Mary Ellen Lannon. I'm your town clerk. And I do request that folks are supportive of this. I have been waiting for quite a long time with the federal census behind us in 2020. My staff and I are very anxious to try the facility at the field house, not only to consolidate the polling places, but to additionally try the Saturday. We have excellent outreach, as you've all experienced in the last 7 elections that we've run since the pandemic, since March of 2020. We've actually had 7 elections, folks. So essentially, my office does outreach with public service announcements. We do WinCam videos. I actually do a lot of videos on the Winchester Residents Facebook page. And then I'm additionally required by Massachusetts general law to notify every voter that there is a change in the polling place. So we will actually be doing that with the election warrant when we set that date. So every household will be notified as well. The additional thing about the voter turnout, when we have a competitive race on the town election and or a ballot question, Winchester usually can get well over 35% voter turnout. So to the person who is talking about parking and traffic and things like that, although on a town election, we do not have early voting like we do on the federal and state, we still will be able to handle the volume of parking, even if we were to be upwards to 60% on voter turnout for those 14 hours. So that's just something to think about. And do keep in mind when if it does get consolidated to one location, you will have 11 days of early voting at the town hall. You'll have 14 days of early voting on the general elections for federal and state. And then on the town election, you absolutely can vote early with an absentee ballot. So although we don't have 5 days of early voting session on a town election, you can come into town hall anytime, 20 days before any town election, and cast your vote at the counter. So I hope that information is telling. Thank you.
Thank you. There are 3 town meeting members that were in the queue who have dropped out. And I just want to confirm before I go to vote that you did not want to speak. That is Colin White of Precinct 2, Pamela Court of Precinct 5, and Chris Nixon of Precinct 1. If the 3 of you or any one of you wanted to speak, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to move the vote. Seeing those 3 town meeting members not request to speak, I'm going to move to the vote. A majority vote of the members present is required. The question is on your screen on Zoom and printed in your motion book on page 21. Please turn your attention to your V-voter screen and select yes if you are in favor and no if you are opposed. We will provide the 45 seconds. There are 146 in the affirmative, 8 in the negative. The affirmative has it, and the motion is adopted. Thank you very much. Give me one moment to transition to our next article. Moving to page 22, Article 8 of your blue book. It is moved and seconded that a town approve Article 8 as printed in the warrant. Proponent of the motion, Mariano Goluboff of the Select Board. There'll be a video in a moment on your screen.
Madam Moderator, town meeting members, Madam Moderator, town meeting members, I'm here at the Town Forest to talk to you about Article 8. So a little background about the Town Forest. It was acquired as the Brooks Parkhurst Town Forest in 1941. It consists of 29 acres of well-preserved forest and wetlands. You could see the picture here on the left, the location of the town forest, and you can see that it is a very well forested area. When it was acquired in 1941, this was prior to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts having established conservation commissions. That happened in 1957 with the General Laws Chapter 40, Section 8C, which establishes conservation commissions for the promotion and development of the natural resources and for the protection of watershed resources. The General Laws Chapter 45, Section 21 authorizes the transfer of what were existing town forests at the time to the Conservation Commission of the town. Now, this does require a vote of town meeting. So that's why we're here tonight. Article 8 transfers oversight of the town forest from the Town Forest Committee to the Conservation Commission. What this allows us to do is to unify all conservation spaces in town under the oversight of the Conservation Committee. So let's look at what those conservation spaces are. This map shows the existing conservation spaces in town. You can see the 5 existing spaces circled in red, and we can see the 3 additional spaces that are either coming online or that are pending or proposed. Those 3 are at the top left, we see the Winning Farm, which is 26 acres. In the top right, we see the arrow pointing to the Montvale parcel, which is about a parcel of about 16 acres. And then what we're proposing tonight with Article 8, you can see at the bottom here the town forest, which is an additional 29 acres. So why is this needed? Well, by unifying oversight with the Conservation Commission, management of all conservation areas can be consistent across town. The Conservation Commission, if this goes forward, would add the Land Steward Associate role. This role will help manage all conservation spaces. Now, what this role will allow is, for example, existing Town Forest Committee members could join as land stewards. It would also allow for students to be able to join the associate role and get involved in conservation activities. Now, the existing Town Forest Committee members and DPW support this transfer of the town forest. The Select Board unanimously recommends that you vote yes on Article 8. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goluboff. We will be now moving to the recommendations of town meeting's consideration from any board or committee. Recommendation of FinCom. Dr. Blackwell?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. FinCom did not vote this article as we did not see a clear financial impact.
Thank you. Mr. David Miller of Conservation Commission.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Yes, obviously the Conservation Commission is in favor of this particular approach. We think it's the best outcome for all the conservation spaces in town.
Seeing no other board or committee member representative rise for recommendation, I will be moving the discussion open. Oh, one moment, please. Looks like the chair of the planning board would like to make a recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The Planning Board unanimously recommended favorable action. The town forest is an integral part of the town's ecosystem, and its management is an important component of the town's resilience against climate change.
Thank you very much. I will be now turning it over to town meeting members. If you please use your speak to speak on the motion. I will be going in order of the time stamped. First on the question, Michelle Pryor, Precinct 4.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Madam Moderator. You got my name right. I'm good to be Michelle Pryor, Precinct 4. I'm wondering, maybe it's a question for Conservation or Select Board. So this is my neighborhood. It's across the street from my house, and I'm in the town forest almost every week. Is there a problem that we're trying to solve with moving this property over to oversight? So 2 questions. Is there a problem we're trying to solve with this motion? And is a conservation associate that Mr. Goluboff put up on the screen, is that expected to be a paid position or is that a volunteer position? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Mr. Goluboff, is this trying to solve a problem, and will the Conservation Association be a paid or volunteer position?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ms. Pryor, no, there isn't necessarily any problem other than the Conservation Commission currently manages all the other conservation areas, and here we have a separate Town Forest Committee. We've had a hard time filling the positions. There's been one position open in the Town Forest Commission, which is a committee of 3. So there's only been 2 people serving, one person serving for many, many years, one for 7 months. And we thank them very much for serving. they're both in favor of this. The second question, as far as the associate members, that is a volunteer position. So that would be associate members of the Conservation Commission. What it means is that they wouldn't have, statutorily, they wouldn't have a voting in Conservation Commission. Conservation Commission has some statutory rights given to it by the general laws. So the associate members would be able to volunteer and help with the management of the conservation lands without necessarily having voting rights into the Conservation Commission.
Thank you very much. I see that a member has moved the vote. There is one person left to speak. I'm going to grant that since it's very early in the discussion. Roger Wilson of Precinct 1.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My question to the proponents is, would there be any change or restriction in the use of the forest? I mountain bike through it fairly regularly and did so last week. And that's the reason I ask.
From town meeting member to the representative of the select board, Mr. Golubov, will there be a change of use?
No, Mr. Wilson, there wouldn't be a change of use. It would still remain as conservation land with the hiking and biking trails. And I can tell you that when I was shooting the 10-second clips for the video here, there were a lot of people riding bikes and hiking past it, so it was great, but I had to reshoot a few times so that I didn't accidentally put people who didn't agree to be on the video with me. So it's great to see that, and we want to continue seeing that in that use in the town forest.
Thank you. As I said, there was a move the vote. I wanted to honor the last person to speak as it was early, so I will be moving the vote at this time. A majority vote of the members present is required. The question is on your screen on Zoom and is printed in your motion booklet on page 22. Please turn your attention to your V voter and select yes if you are in favor and no if you are opposed. We will be providing now 30 seconds, as that seems that all of you are getting your votes in within 30 seconds. Thank you. There are 141 in the affirmative and 14 in the negative. The affirmative has it and the motion is adopted. We are, town meeting, going to move forward with Article 9. We have many consultants that are on line with us, and we would like to be respectful of their time as they've been waiting for us to make it to Article 9. All right, I'm just asking for a technical question from our legal, as I didn't think you all wanted me to read the moved and seconded for on page 23 verbatim, and we do not need to, as stated by town council. So it is moved and seconded as Article 9 as written in page 23 of your blue booklet. Yes, you want to post that? Proponent of the motion, Mr. Michael Betancourt of the Select Board. Oh, my apologies. It's a joint video actually with Ms. Susan Verdicchio and Mr. Michael Betancourt.
Good evening, town meeting members. My name is Susan Verdicchio. I'm chair of the Select Board, and I'm here with my colleague, Mike Betancourt, to present on Article 9 on the Washington and Swanton Street proposal. The Select Board brings this article before you tonight to renew our efforts to redevelop this property at the corner of Washington and Swanton Streets.
For decades, the property at this busy corner was a flourishing local shopping destination, originally owned and operated by Donato Gattineri and his family. The main store was Fashion Clothiers, a thriving family business for 65 years. More recently, the complex included a local bank branch, a convenience store, and a photo finishing store, among other local small businesses catering to the daily needs of the neighborhood.
Later on, after a long legal battle over an attempt to redevelop the site as a CVS, the buildings have been sitting vacant for years, underutilized and deteriorating, hampered by the site's commercial zoning and their poor condition.
In 2019, a new proposal emerged for a mixed-use, 25% affordable residential development. The new developer, Brian Melanson, worked closely with the town to plan a friendly 40B of approximately 60 units with ground floor retail. At a well-attended neighborhood meeting, the concept received enthusiastic vocal support. It is unclear why the proposal was deferred or derailed, and the property was sold in 2020.
Also in 2020, the town adopted a new 10-year master plan. And this master plan places the Washington and Swanton corner, which we have starred on this map, as a gateway to an evolving opportunity area, where the primary planning goal is to encourage more commercial, mixed-use, and compact development supporting economic vibrancy. Walkable to the town center and Winchester Hospital, the site is also near the Tri-Community Bikeway, the black line on the map, and that connects Morocco Elementary School to the north and Winchester High School to the south. Stop and Shop supermarket is near the high school. The master plan goes on to say, a primary connection between North Main and Washington Streets, Swanton Street presents opportunities to foster redevelopment of key sites.
Winchester's 2030 master plan also directs us to create and preserve housing that is affordable and accessible to all, especially small-scale development that harmonizes with Winchester's character and provides easy access to everyday amenities and needs. With increasing home values and a continuing surge of knockdowns, diversity of housing is vital to maintaining the fabric of our community.
Around the same time, the Select Board adopted a housing production plan under Chapter 40B. 40B is a state law established in 1969 to require towns to build affordable housing. The law permits developers to circumvent local zoning and fast-track low or moderate income housing development with limited input from local authorities. Cities and towns are subject to 40B development if they are under 10% affordable, and Winchester is under 4%. Having a housing production plan in place allows local authorities to control the development of housing and cope with growth. Winchester attained safe harbor status under the 40B with the approval of the River Street 40B. The town can reject 40B developments if we produce 40 units per year to extend the safe harbor. Winchester's safe harbor expires on March 21st, 2022. Winchester and Swanton is listed in the town's housing production plan as a prime location for multi-unit affordable rental housing in a mixed-use area near transportation. As long as the project provides 20% of the units at the desired level of affordability, if rental, all of the units count towards our obligation.
Last fall, town meeting authorized the Select Board to acquire the Washington Swanton property by eminent domain or purchase for up to $3.2 million. We are before you tonight to raise the authorized amount by $2 million based on new information and a revised value for the land. Our plan remains the same, to transfer the land to a qualified developer with the best affordable housing redevelopment proposal. Article 12 seeks to authorize the Select Board to acquire by purchase, donation, eminent domain, or otherwise for up to $5.3 million.
Deliberations by town meeting members last year focused on first negotiating with the new owner of the 1-acre site, who had been in control of the property for only a short time, before going ahead with taking by eminent domain. After the town meeting, Select Board had town council contact and start negotiations with the new owner's attorney for a purchase. In the course of multiple conversations and meetings, the council learned of another previous offer that had been made for the property and conflicting claims surrounding the sale to the new owner. Sometime later, town council learned of new litigation involving the property. It became clear more investigation and a revised appraisal would be advisable. Our request now for authorization to up to $5.3 million is based on the new current appraised value, a new appraised value done by the firm of Winchester.
One of the benefits of our AAA bond rating is that we can borrow for a short time very inexpensively. One of the tools that the town employs for everything from flood mitigation to school construction is the use of short-term bonds or BANs. The Affordable Housing Trust currently has in excess of $1 million and could be a source of funding for the first year debt service of $104,000 and a further $140,000 in the unlikely event that it takes 2 years to close a purchase by a developer. Other potential funding sources include the Select Board Affordable Housing Fund or possibly ARPA. Not a single dollar will come out of the town's operating budget or free cash.
Let's recall potential 40Bs of the past. While a proposed 340-unit 40B on Holton Street in 2017 was withdrawn, Bain Capital has since purchased the property and could put forward a 40B the day we fall out of safe harbor in March 2022. A project proposed 340 units of housing before the Holton Street. This was a project proposed off of Forest Street.
The board's objectives here remain the same: to increase deed-restricted affordable housing and maintain safe harbor status. The town would acquire the land in order to sell to a qualified developer through the required bidding process. We would establish a working group to evaluate the proposals, a group that could include neighbors and town meeting members and a finance committee member. The short-term debt service would be paid by the Affordable Housing Trust, and the town's Affordable Housing Trust retains ownership of affordability restriction.
As you likely recall, the town's Affordable Housing Trust was established in 2019 and funded by $1 million transferred from the existing Select Board Housing Fund. Having this trust allows the town to be more flexible and to leverage limited resources in pursuit of affordable housing goals. The existing of the trust also allows the town to maintain the privately owned redevelopments of affordability over time. The Affordable Housing Trust Governing Committee has voted to approve this Article 9.
This neighborhood needs our protection and our action. Our master plan is meaningless without the courage to implement it. In the words of trailblazing planner Jane Jacobs, we need eyes on the street to have a living neighborhood. The sidewalk must have users on it. Nobody enjoys sitting on a stoop or looking out a window at an empty street. Almost nobody does such a thing. Our efforts are only as strong as our willingness to pursue the change we seek. This parcel presents both an opportunity and a responsibility.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the question, do we have recommendations for town meeting's consideration from any board or committee? Dr. Blackwell from FinCom.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. FinCom did vote 7 in favor and 4 opposed with 1 abstaining. The concerns were the environmental remediation that might be required on the site, the length of holding onto the property, but and how much we would regain for our investment in the site. But the majority of FinCom saw the benefits of this article, seeing new growth from the development, from also achieving the desired affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a point of order from Dr. John Miller, Precinct 6.
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, I can. What's your point of order?
I believe that I think, Madam Moderator, that Selectman Verdicchio made and Selectman Betancourt made a misstatement. The 2030 master plan has not been adopted by the town. I'm looking at the May 29th, 2020 letter from the former chair of the planning board, Madam Moderator. The master plan has not been presented to town meeting. It was adopted by the planning board and has not been presented by town meeting to date. So I think it's not correct to say that the town has adopted the master plan. And I think we need substantial discussion about that plan.
Thank you, Dr. Miller, for pointing that out. That actually is not a point of order, but that would have been a wonderful thing to point out during the debate. Further on the question, we also have the chair of the planning board who's about to speak, who will probably address some of your comments as a result, though. So thank you. Mr. Diabjurius of the planning board.
Oh, thank you. My apologies, Madam Moderator. I would like to point out that the requirement of the master plan is that the master plan be endorsed and voted upon by the planning board. The planning board did bring it to town meeting, and it was affirmed by a vote of town meeting in March of 2020. I want to point out the planning board chose to recommend favorable action on this article. Stating the appraisal is more reflective of market conditions. The board is supportive of continuing efforts to develop affordable housing on this site. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further on the question, representative of the Affordable Housing Trust, Marty Jones. While we wait for Marty Jones to be brought in as a speaker, we're going to go to John Serbier of the Housing Partnership Board, as I see he is ready.
Okay, my name is John Serbier. I chair the Winchester's Housing Partnership Board. The Housing Partnership Board, by a 10-0 vote, voted to recommend support of town meeting approval of Article 9, giving the town authority to acquire this Washington and Swanton Street land for the purpose of providing affordable housing. This is an excellent location to build either home ownership or rental, multifamily mixed income housing, combined with some commercial retail space. It is important to not build just high-end, large single-family homes. The town also needs housing that is appropriate for moderate and middle-income households. Town efforts to work cooperatively with the existing owner and their potential developers to date have not been successful. This article provides improved and updated leverage for the town in these discussions. Accordingly, the Housing Partnership Board encourages a yes vote on Article 9. Thank you.
At this moment, Ms. Marty Jones, we're unable to find you. If you could please use the Q&A or raise your hand so we can find you among all of the participants. At this time, not seeing her rise, we will be moving onward. That concludes the recommendations for town meeting's consideration from boards and committees. However, we do have our representative, Michael Day, with us, and he would like to speak on this article.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, Madam Clerk, and members of town meeting for the opportunity to address you briefly here tonight. While I always watch and enjoy town meeting, I normally don't speak at it, but departing from that briefly, just to provide a recent update, I think that's relevant to Article 9. from the legislature. Recently in our ARPA bill, in which we're appropriating additional ARPA funds to the state, my colleagues and I in the House voted to pass through an additional $150,000 earmark for the Winchester Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I spoke to Town Manager Beth Rudolph and Assistant Town Manager Mark Toogood about this particular article and its alignment with both Winchester's housing production plan and the state's affordable housing construction goals, and pursued this earmark in the House successfully, thankfully to my colleagues. It's my understanding that this money can knock off approximately 2 years of debt service from this project for the town, or otherwise be used to defray costs for this project as the town deems fit. And again, while it's only through the House, I know Senator Lewis and Senator Jalen have been extraordinarily successful in making sure that these earmarks stay in through the Senate process. So we're very confident in these monies surviving this bill process and ultimately being voted into law, which would again result in an additional $150,000 coming from the state to be dedicated to this, to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So I just wanted to offer that as well as my support of this article. Again, in keeping with the town's goals on the housing production plan, as well as increasing the housing construction, the construction of affordable housing in the state. Again, thanks very much for the opportunity to address you all, and I'll go back to now enjoying the show. Thank you.
I hope it's quite the show. So moving onward, town meeting members, if you'd like to use the speak on the motion button on your V voter, we'll be moving towards our debate. We have a point of order from Diabjurius of Precinct 8.
Madam Moderator, I don't know if this is an appropriate use of the point of order. I need to correct a statement that I just made in response to Mr. Miller or Dr. Miller.
Please do correct her. Go ahead.
I was mistaken. I have in my notes that we had brought forward the master plan to town meeting and it was affirmed. That is incorrect. Mr. Miller, or Dr. Miller rather, is correct, and I apologize profusely. Thank you.
Thank you very much for correcting that. Currently, town meeting members, we have 6 speakers in line. We will first start with Brian Vernalia of Precinct 4. I'm going to actually give you the list of the voters in order, of the speakers in order. We have Brian Vernalia, Paul Manganero of Precinct 6, Ann Sarah, Precinct 1, Roger Wilson of Precinct 1, Anthony Conti of Precinct 2. And it looks like we have about 4, 5, 6 more coming in behind.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I have 2 questions through you to whoever would be most appropriate. The first was, it was mentioned that Safe Harbor would expire in March. I am curious if passing this article tonight will impact Safe Harbor expiring in March in any way, or if that was just a helpful piece of information. And my second question is, are the owners of this parcel of land here tonight to speak, and or were they invited to come tonight to speak, so we could understand why they have not moved forward on any work on this land in the 1.5 or 2 years that they've owned it? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. From the town meeting member through me to Select Board Member Michael Betancourt. Can you please confirm if this will impact Safe Harbor's date of March, along with whether are the owners here or are they invited to speak at this meeting? Mr. Betancourt?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. And just quickly, can you repeat the question if you wouldn't mind?
Of course. The question was, does this impact Safe Harbor for March? And are the owners here or were they invited to speak?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It is unlikely that it will impact our safe harbor for March. We certainly will make the case, if this is approved and we move forward with this, to DHCD that we have put much more than a good faith effort in meeting our goals of 40 units per year. I think DHCD has signaled to us in the past that the dates are there and they are important for us to use as targets, but there is always an opportunity for us to make the case that we are moving forward with a project. They do require projects to be permitted in order to get credit towards the subsidized housing inventory. So we will make the case. I think that's why we had started this process a year ago and spent so much time in an effort in negotiation with the current landowners to try to move the process forward without eminent domain. I don't believe, to answer the second question from Mr. Vignelli, I don't think that the owners were invited. We've kept an open line of communication with them and had many meetings with them, with their attorneys over the course of the year. And so we've always kept the door open and communications open with them. But I don't believe they are here. So just want to answer that question.
Thank you. Mr. Paul Manganaro, Precinct 6.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, there
Hello?
you are. Yes, hello. Thank
Okay,
you.
sorry about that. I'm on my phone tonight. Good evening, Madam Moderator. My question to the select board members is, if we had to take this by eminent domain, how long a process do you think that would be? And what do you expect to sell the property for if we're going to invest $5.3 million in it? And in what reasonable time frame do you see? Thank you.
Thank you very much. From town meeting member. One moment, we got an echo. All right. From town meeting member through me to Mr. Michael Betancourt of the Select Board. Can you please confirm the length of the process for eminent domain? What the anticipated selling price for, given the purchase price, and the time frame?
Thank you, Madam Moderator, through you to Mr. Manganaro. The process is actually very quick. So with town meeting authorization, we can go in almost immediately and issue an order of taking. And the property is under the control of the town. And then within 60 days, we have to provide fair market value to the current owners. So during that period, we will be undergoing further analysis to determine what we think that property is worth. Some of that will be studying the environmental impact of the property, which we've already done quite a bit of research on, and other market conditions to come up with a final price. So the number that we're asking for is really on the much higher end of what our range is. We also found out more information since last year that the current owners actually paid more than was on record. So we kind of raised the floor of our range and lowered the ceiling. So we have a much tighter range of negotiation. So the process will be very quick. We have already established a working group, which we will reconvene and add members to, and that include elected officials from the planning board, select board, members of town meeting, residents from the area, housing partnership board. We want the discussion around what the property will be to be expansive, but we've already moved forward with a pretty good draft of the RFP. So we can issue that contemporaneously with taking the property, and really move to select a developer for the project very quickly. So it could be by the expiration of our safe harbor that we have identified a developer and awarded the property to someone and received funds. But as I mentioned, the requirement to maintain safe harbor is permit issuing, and that will take probably another 5 to 6 months to be done.
Further on the question, Anthony Conti of Precinct 2.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm opposed to this. This project takes place in Precinct 2 and my precinct, and I am opposed to this project for several reasons. First of all, the town does not have a very good record at property development. I don't know if many members remember when we acquired the west side, the farm on the west side, where we were assured that we would get our purchase price back. And it ended up costing the town something on the order of $2 million that we were not able to recover, and I believe we're still paying off that bond issue that we floated to cover that cost. It's all well and good to say that the interest payments will be covered by the Housing Partnership Board and the money that the state may give us. However, the principal is at issue, and principal payments are far more greater concern than the interest payments. And I would also point out to town meeting that the cost of an order of taking is determined by a judicial process, not by the town's appraisal. So once we take that property, we're stuck with it. And if the court later determines that it's worth more than the town thinks it's worth, we're on the hook for that payment. And I don't want to place the town at risk, especially considering the town's less than stellar performance of property development, as witnessed by the fiasco at the Waterfield lot most recently. So this is asking the town to take a chance, and I just don't see it. And that property could be developed as a commercial property, which would bring in tax revenue to the town without having the cost of schooling that would come with residential property. So I would ask that we vote no on this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the question, Roger Wilson of Precinct 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moderator, excuse me. My questions are two. One, the 40 units per year was mentioned, but it wasn't indicated how many years we need to build at least a 40-unit apartment building in Winchester. And so I, through you, would like to ask somebody to come up with that figure. From where we are currently with our inventory to how many units, assuming that they're all rental units, so they'd all qualify, how many 40-unit developments we would need, or how many years we would need to get to 10%. The other question, the housing, I believe was the person from the Housing Partnership Board that mentioned ownership. And I wanted to be sure from the proponents that there's no idea of developing this for ownership, which does not qualify for the inventory. So that we'd have a percentage, I believe it's 25% of affordable units. The balance would be rental units, so the whole development would count toward our 10% target there. And those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. From town meeting member through the moderator to Mr. Betancourt of the Select Board. How many years will it take to build to get to the 10%? Is the first question.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm going to actually defer this excellent question to Brian Zakelli, Town Planner, if I could.
Sure.
Great. I was just going to ask if Mr. Zakelli is still present. Mr. Zakelli, would you be able to answer the question of how many years it will take to get to the 10%? And then
Sure.
also
So,
the second question as well regarding rental.
so we basically have to go about another 6%, which doing 40 units per year. So we're, total back of the napkin here is somewhere between 10 to 12 years. What was the second question?
What counts towards the 10%? Is that, I would like to actually go back to Mr. Wilson. Can you clarify your second?
So the second question, just to clear, so what Brian is saying is 10 or 12 40-unit apartment buildings need to be located in the next 10 or 12 years in Winchester. So the other question is in regard, because some of the proposals I saw for this site included owned units, which would not count toward the affordable inventory. And I want to be sure that the proponents are advocating and would only entertain proposals for rental units, not ownership units. Ownership is more profitable for the developer, so it takes less units. But rental is what gets us to the 10%.
Thank you. I'm going to take that question and redirect it back to Mr. Betancourt as a representative of the proponent. Can you please state if the intention is to rent or for ownership of the housing units?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to Mr. Wilson, another great question. It's absolutely a rental project that we are looking for, and we have had a lot of interest in recent years in doing a rental project there. And it would be some form of ground level retail and then rental units above. So the way that we construct these RFPs, and we have hired Jennifer Goldson, who has worked on many of our projects, the master plan, Waterfield, and we, which have been very successful. And we give points for certain things that are highly advantageous and things that are less advantageous. And so you rank higher when you have rental units and more affordable housing. So that is the number one objective. And just as a reminder, what we're asking for is deed restricted affordable housing here. So we're not going to take the property and do something else. We're only asking for authority from town meeting to build affordable housing in this location. And affordable housing means to us rental units that will count towards our SHI or subsidized housing inventory.
Thank you very much. Further on the question, Ms. Annika Bergstrom of Precinct 3.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to speak in favor of Article 9 because I feel like increasing the amount of affordable housing in Winchester is very important. And the fact that we're only at 4%, I think close to 5% with the new affordable units going up out of the 10% that the state's requiring is I understand that the town's been doing a lot of work to get closer to that 10%, but I think that kind of any effort that we can make to keep pushing towards that effort is really important. I think that being a student in the schools, I see a lot of just how little socioeconomic diversity there is in Winchester and how problematic that can be for people who are even currently living in Winchester who get priced out of Winchester, who have lived here, who I've known kids who have had to whose families have had to move out of Winchester because they've been priced out. And so I think making affordable housing available is super important. I think that having even more affordable units will be really useful in the schools also because it gives the opportunity for young teachers and staff to live in the town that they're working in, which again is something that I think would be super important and is super important for building community. And I think that's something that we need to think about when approaching these affordable housing projects is the fact that they are very beneficial for the town as a whole and not just for meeting a state requirement.
Thank you very much. Further on the question, Pamela Court of Precinct 5.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to make a motion to indefinitely postpone this warrant article. I'm very much in support of increasing affordable housing in our community. I would very much be in favor of supporting the use of this parcel for doing so, but I feel like there are a lot of unknowns and a lot of questions. And we've seen what happens when we don't have a better informed group, both among town meeting members and among the residents, when it comes to these kinds of major projects. And I feel like this is a little premature given some of the questions that were raised at the town manager's public hearing. Things like what the potential costs would be for any kind of legal dealings, whether it's an appeal on behalf of the current owners, whether it has to do with appreciating what kind of remediation would be required should the soil be found to be contaminated, which my understanding is that we have no way of actually going in and testing and verifying now, as we would have to trespass in order to do that. There's been a draft RFP developed. It was the language of that was requested. Allusions to certain things were made there, but nobody has seen a copy of this draft RFP. It's unclear how the new assessment was accomplished, even if details about what the actual numbers are can't be provided. Something in writing, something that documents a little bit more specifically what those where those numbers came from, I think would help a lot in sort of asking us to raise the ceiling on this. Eminent domain is a really serious thing to do. It's the nuclear option when all other things are exhausted. If people are upset about the maintenance of the site, we should have years ago passed a bylaw that prevented neglect of commercial properties to the extent that that property was neglected. And we had the power to do that, and we chose not to. Saying we don't want to see it run down anymore when we failed to do things that we could have done is not a good reason to do this. There are many good reasons to do this, but that's not one of them. Again, when it comes to keeping people fully informed, I feel like there's so many questions about this. There's nothing right now that guarantees that that property will be developed in the way that was described, because we don't have that language in the warrant article, and we don't have any idea what would be in that draft RFP. So I support a rental property. I support commercial on the first floor, but it's nowhere in writing. And after what happened with Waterfield, I'm very concerned that if we are not extremely tight and extremely clean in how we conduct these kinds of projects, that this could blow up and become very expensive for the town, very divisive, and not get us where we really want to go, which is, again, I fully support the goal of this, but I think we need to do a cleaner job. So I would like to make a motion to indefinitely postpone.
There's a motion to indefinitely postpone. Is there a second?
On the request to speak, they could drop down and say second motion.
Yeah, it was Christopher Jones of Precinct 7. I will give it to you, although there's a handful. From that point, I am actually going to ask the voter to clean out the speaker queue, because I am unable to tell who would like to speak on the motion for indefinite postponement and who would like to speak on the actual motion. So give me one moment and I will tell you at that point at what time you can request to speak on the motion to indefinitely postpone. The speaker queue has been cleared out. Further on the question, and Sarah, Precinct 1.
Hi, this is Ann Sarah. I support this motion to indefinitely postpone. We've heard a lot tonight about how we need more housing, we need more housing, we need more housing, but that's not what we're voting on. We're merely, you guys in town meeting already voted to authorize this. What you're voting now is a difference between 3 million and 5 million. And as Pam Court has stated, but perhaps not as emphatic as I'd like to state it, is that we have no discussion on why the property would be worth $5 million. I say it is not worth $5 million. Our assessor's office says it's not worth $5 million. And this appraisal that was not done in public, nor was the request for a proposal. None of this was done in public. A lot of the meetings that occurred behind this was done by some sort of a secret panel, a panel that was by invitation only, and a panel that did not follow open meeting laws, even though it clearly was convened in order to make recommendations to the select board. So I think we need to step back and say, hey, what is going on with this property? Why would it be worth 5 million and not 3 million? Realizing that whatever price that you want to pay for this, you're going to be embroiled in terrific litigation from a band of owners that has already done a shill sale, trying to put up one of their associates as a new owner. It's not a new owner. This is the same group of 7 people that have initiated at least 7 lawsuits between themselves on prior offers to buy this property. So if the town, we really need to look at this more closely. Yes, we would like to potentially see this developed, but how to do that is a process that needs to be open. And we need to indefinitely postpone this so that we can have that process that wasn't had before. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Further on the question to indefinitely postpone the article before us, Mr. Michael Betancourt of the Select Board.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just wanted to address a few things, and I think we appreciated the support from town meeting to move forward with this a year ago. Part of our effort with getting a much more accurate and in-depth proposal reviewing environmental concerns, environmental risk, as well as market conditions, was to limit that high-end risk. As I mentioned before, the only risk to the town from a legal perspective is on fair market value. So we've determined that what we're asking for here is on the high end. It could be that we also negotiate with the landowners after receiving this authority for a straight sale. So there are options here. I think it's easy for everyone to say, let's keep waiting. We need more information. This has been before and on the select board agenda. It's been on the housing trust agenda, the planning board agenda, and and we've received and also the housing partnership board. All of them have approved it. I think all of them unanimously as well. So I think that this has received a very high level of engagement from town meeting, number one, but also from all our boards and commissions. So part of the reason why we can't release the appraisal is not because we're hiding it from anyone. It's really because it's part of our negotiations, and we need to protect the town from having to pay more or expose us to further litigation down the road. So we're happy to open up the working group further. I think we thought last year that we were going to move forward very quickly. And so we brought together volunteers to the committee who wanted to engage in the process from the neighborhood and from the planning board and from the select board and from town meeting to try to move this forward. So we've got a draft, but it doesn't mean it's the final part. We can certainly bring more people into that conversation as we go forward. But this is really what 40B was designed to prevent, is motions like this, right? It was called the 40B anti-snob zoning law, as it was created in 1969. And it was so communities couldn't use pretextual reasons to stop affordable housing. So we've made our commitment in a housing production plan, and Winchester is the greatest at putting plans forward, but now is an opportunity that we need to take to really put it into action. And it really is in synchronicity with the need to repair this really dilapidated corner of town. So I hope town meeting will reject this and continue the conversation as we had spoke last year about this, and town meeting has supported it and with a 2/3 vote. So we know the support is there from town meeting, and we appreciate giving us a little bit more flexibility financially to do it. And again, we're looking to pass this through the town. So we're going to issue some temporary bans and move it on to the developer who's going to purchase it. One of the reasons that Ms. Sarah is incorrect on the value at 3 million is the current owners paid 4 million for it. So we know it's worth more than that already, just at the floor. Our appraiser has done an in-depth appraisal of the property, and it's inaccurate to say that our, I guess, assessor is what you said it's not worth that. That is also inaccurate. So I think that there's a lot of inaccuracies about this process, but there's an opportunity for town meeting to do something about this property when everybody drives by every day and says, geez, I wish somebody would do something about this. That's what we're here tonight to do. And we have all the resources and all the support from our elected officials and from boards and commissions to do that. So I encourage you to say no to this motion to indefinitely postpone.
Thank you. We have a move the vote from Michael Russo of Precinct 4. With that, we will turn to our V voter, but I would like to give you the information of who is sitting in line. We have either Jared Cummings or Paul Carl of Precinct 4, Michelle Pryor of Precinct 4, Krista Anzalone Russo of Precinct 1, Stacy Irizarry of Precinct 5, Dorothy Simboli of Precinct 6. And we have a couple move the votes. So if you could turn your attention to V voter, we'll be, one moment, there's a point of order. Ms. Jackie Welch of Precinct 5.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. What's your point of order?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's probably not a point of order, but it's the second time I've been confirmed as a speaker request received and not been allowed to speak or whatever, or been on the list. So if you could just add.
So could you just go through the Q&A, please, to the deputy moderator, and we can problem solve the technical issues?
Thank you.
Thank you. We will turn your attention to V voter. We are voting currently to indefinitely postpone Article 9, which is on page 23 of your blue booklets. Give us 1 minute. We are going to get V voter up and running for that motion. There's another point of order by Mr. Roger Wilson of Precinct 1.
I'm sorry, I had trouble unmuting. Madam Moderator, I'm confused. You said we had a motion to move the vote, but we didn't vote.
Yes, you're
to
correct.
Move the vote.
We're changing that. We have to vote for the motion to move the vote. So we first have to vote to close debate on the motion to indefinitely postpone, and from there we can then determine our next steps as a meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson, for pointing out that. If you turn to your V voter, you will notice that the motion to terminate debate on the indefinite postponement of Article 9 is on. We'll give you 30 seconds. There are 90 in the affirmative and 49 in the negative. The affirmative has it and the motion is adopted. We will now move to the motion that currently stands, which is to indefinite postpone Article 9. Give us one moment as we get the voter up and ready for that motion. Motion to indefinitely postpone with 56 in the affirmative, 81 in the negative. The negative has it and the motion is lost. Returning back to Article 9. We are going to clear the speaker queue. Give me one moment before you request to speak, and then we will return to debate. Town meeting members, you need to stop clicking and wait till we clear the queue, and then I will tell you, and then get ready to do whatever you want to do to try to get that timestamp before everyone else. So please give us 1 minute to clear the full queue. All right, on your mark, get set, go. John Richard of Precinct 1. Further on question regarding Article 9.
Madam Moderator, I'm against passage of this motion for two main reasons. First of all, town government is not a very good vehicle for real estate development. These are good people with good motives, but just by its nature, it's just not nimble enough. It moves too slowly, and also, frankly, it lacks sufficient skin in the game. These are millions of dollars we're talking about, and nothing so focuses the mind as being personally on the hook for that kind of money, but no one in this process will be. But I oppose this article mostly because I can't in good conscience vote to take someone else's property just because we can't make a deal with the current owner. My main objection is with the eminent domain aspect of this. In America, you own your property free and clear. There are some exceptions for eminent domain. That was traditionally for actual public use. A hospital, a school. My property happens to be in a straight line between two railroad stations, and they have to take it. But this is not a true public use. This is not flood mitigation, school construction. And a previous proponent spoke of eyes on the street, and I'm for eyes on the street, but not envious eyes looking at my property, looking to expropriate it for something that's not a truly public use. And another speaker said that the owners have been non-cooperative, and we need, quote, improved and updated leverage. That's chilling to me, and anyone it should be who values private property. That's not how a community deals with each other. That's how Whitey Bulger buys a liquor store. How can you have a negotiation with someone when what you're telling them is, here's the price, and if you don't accept it, well, we're just going to take it. And at some other prior hearings about this question, I actually heard people say, I don't understand. Is it either or? Can we just take it, or do we have to pay them? I mean, this kind of stuff is, I guess it's a failure of the educational system, but it really bothers me. And no American citizen should fear that his neighbors want his property, and if they band together in large enough numbers, they can take it. And as far as what the property's worth, I guess the town in its wisdom thought it was worth $3 million a year ago, and now it's $5 million. But it's actually worth, especially commercial properties, what can you do with it? And so, of course, we don't know what it's worth, what the market will be. We don't know what happens in between the time you get it and not. This is a very risky business to be in. And respectfully, some people were asking, why didn't the owners move forward with this land? Well, respectfully, that's none of our business. What if the owners have decided they just want this asset of theirs to be held as land? They don't want to turn it into money. They don't want to develop it. They think the next generation should. Maybe they think prices in real estate will rise faster than the S&P or the bonds or whatever they can do with the money. They may be wrong. I don't agree with them, but that's their right. You know, they're being castigated for not developing this. And we might not like it, and we might disagree with them. But in a free society, that's what the owner decides, not the government. So, you know, the idea that someone wants to hold their property, that's their right. And I can't imagine if I were on the other side of a negotiation and the town told me, well, here's what we're willing to pay, and if you don't take it, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to take it and give you the money, and that's it. So this talk about leverage is chilling. So it's unfair, it's un-American. I can't in good conscience put my name on it. So I would urge a no vote, but at a minimum, I would urge taking the eminent domain option off the table. I know about the Kelo case. I'm a real estate lawyer. I've seen enough of this. But this is not a true public purpose. And even for those of you who agree it is, this is strong arming somebody. This isn't dealing fairly with someone. And I don't know these owners. Maybe they're very hard to deal with. You know, in America, you have the right to be hard to deal with also. I don't understand the cavalier way in which we're taking people's property rights. If you don't protect these people, don't be surprised when you're next, I guess is what I'd say. So I would urge a no vote. And if you can't vote no on the whole thing, let's at least amend it and take out this sword, which doesn't belong in a free society. It sounds like something out of Dr. Zhivago, where they come in the house and tell people he's got enough rooms, he should give them up. This is no way for Americans to behave, in my view. So please vote no.
We have a move the vote from Robert Deering of Precinct 1. Do we have a second? Brian Vernalia of Precinct 4 has seconded to move the vote. Just so everyone is aware of who remains in line. We have either Jared Cummings or Paula Carl of Precinct 4, Stacey Irizarry, Precinct 5, Michelle Pryor, Precinct 4, Dorothy Simboli, Precinct 6, Krista Roos and Anzalone Russo of Precinct 1, and Carol Savage. Oh, and Russell Gay of Precinct 8. If we can give one moment to the voter as they set up the motion to end debate. While he gets that up, as for those boards and committees who I've reached out to and to town meeting members who have asked, there has been a request that when debate extends for a period of time, that we return back to the proponent for closing comments. I will honor that and offer Mr. Michael Betancourt closing comments. Mr. Michael Betancourt?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I think, as I've mentioned a few times, there are a lot of synchronicities with this article moving forward for the town. One of those is the amount of tax revenue that we're leaving on the table. We receive about $37,000 a year in taxes on the unimproved property. It doesn't perform well, doesn't provide housing for the town. It doesn't provide any retail or commercial use for us. If we move forward with an affordable housing project here, we're looking at between $250,000 and $300,000 in tax revenue per year. So this property has been vacant and not performing for the town for almost a decade. So I'll let you do the math on the value of the property, how much the town has lost. We also, with these affordable housing projects, get a significant amount of revenue from building permit fees. The River Street 40B project, we received a $700,000 payment in excess of $500,000 on Cambridge Street. So not only do these projects provide necessary affordable housing for the community, but also necessary revenue. So one way or another, we will have our safe harbor expire this March. And this is one of the very few options that the town has to really move forward with affordable housing commitment that we made with the Housing Production Plan. The Finance Committee, Housing Partnership Board, Affordable Housing Trust, Planning Board, Select Board, we've all voted unanimously to move forward, although I correct that, it was 7-4 with the Finance Committee. There certainly are concerns, and I think this is a question of the perfect getting in the way of the good, and we have spent a long time negotiating with the owners here and have not had any interest from them in moving forward with any affordable housing there. So I appreciate the questions from town meeting members. I think that this is time for us to honor our commitment to our housing production plan and create affordable housing in our community. I'm disappointed that there are a lot of members in queue that are still not being heard from. And I think that's really the purpose of us being here tonight. So I wish some of them would be heard, and I appreciate your time, and please vote in favor of this article and not in favor of postponing the or terminating debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Town meeting members, if you can turn your attention to the V voter, the motion that we are currently voting on is to end the debate of Article 9. It's getting late, as you can tell. And so if you can move to V voter, voting yes will end the debate on Article 9, voting no will continue the debate for Article 9. 30 seconds, please. With 70 in the affirmative and 74 in the negative has it, and the motion fails. Returning back to the debate, I am unclear on if it's Jared Cummings or Paul Carl who is next up. You should be able to unmute yourself to identify.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It's, I believe, Jared Cumming.
All right.
Not as vacant as my name in your system would make you think.
Thank you. As one of our new members, he did not have his name in the voter yet, so that is how I did not know who it was. So yes. Please proceed from precinct 4.
Thank you for your patience, Madam Moderator. I wanted to also oppose this article, and the reason is actually around some of the wording in terms of what happens next. And I recognize that this was voted on at a previous select board and approved, and this is a motion to change the amount of money. But as written, the motion replaces whatever was before with a whole set of new language. I want to read 4 lines from that toward the end, and that the select board be authorized to sell or lease all or a portion of the property following its acquisition by the town for the purposes of placing and constructing affordable housing on such property to either be owned by or subject to an affordable housing restriction held by the Winchester Affordable Housing Trust or its designee on such terms and conditions as the select board deems appropriate. Now, as many have said, I think everybody is in support of diversification of the socioeconomic strata in the town and of affordable housing. The question is the motion currently reads, after this vote, town meeting members no longer have any say. So what does selling a portion of the property look like? What would happen to the other property? Do town meeting members have any input into that? It says sell or lease all of a portion or a portion. So there's no clarity on this. And it seems to be that after this vote, there's very little input from anybody in the town. And it really comes down to 4 people or 5 if the select board were at full capacity, where there are some questions about historical performance. And I think we cannot support, and I currently cannot support language like this as currently written. If amended, possibly. Again, for the goal of getting affordable housing in town. Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the question, Stacey Irizarry of Precinct 5.
Madam Moderator, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you for your patience.
Sorry about that. I rise to speak in favor of this motion. As I think other speakers have said before, this is an important location in the corridor of evolving development. It's a great location. The neighbors want development there. It used to be a vibrant area, and I think the neighbors really deserve for the area to be developed. I also wanted to kind of echo what Ms. Verdicchio and Mr. Betancourt were talking about. The Affordable Housing Trust did meet with the proponents. We had a lot of our questions answered. We discussed them coming back to us, as the project progressed, to discuss further the RFP, and it is really a partnership, I think, between the Affordable Housing Trust and other boards and select board to move this development forward. And so just want to invite people to join me in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jackie Welch of Precinct 5.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'll be brief just because others have made really important comments, and I appreciate those comments of those in favor and not in favor. Having had the honor of serving on the select board, I know about this project to some extent. I know about the honorable goals that the select board has been working hard on with respect to this article, and I thank them, and I thank Mr. Betancourt for his efforts in particular with, being the proponent or the speaker in favor of Article 9. A lot of my concerns, though, have been echoed by others here, and it is all about the numbers. So, and I'm not necessarily questioning the 5.3 million that are referenced in the article, but it's just that what do we know that will translate into? There's been reference to an RFP, but all those specifics are very relevant, including to the neighborhood. So if this will only work as, say, for example, a 7-story building, I know the picture was lovely, but we have no guarantee that that will be the building. I think that picture was like 3 stories or something. If a developer ultimately says that the town will only be able to kind of make its money back if it's like a 6 or 7-story building that's sort of built to the perimeter, that's not necessarily something that the neighborhood may want or that anybody may want. So to kind of wrap this up quickly, I think that there are a lot of details that town meeting deserves to know. And I guess that's the bottom line for me. I'm completely in favor of all of the important aspects of affordable housing, but that's not the issue with this article. I think probably everyone who's a member of town meeting and perhaps the entire town are for affordable housing. So it should not, it's completely unfair to suggest that anyone who wouldn't be in favor of this article is against affordable housing. That's not the point at all. We're for affordable housing. It's just whether or not this provides enough details that we think that this will be a successful effort. And also town meeting deserves to know what, more specifics about what would have to be built essentially to cover those numbers. Thank you so much, town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further on the question, Michelle Pryor of Precinct 4. And just so I figured,
Thank you.
Real quick before, I just wanted to let town meeting members know, I thought I'd have more time while you got elevated, that we still have Krista Anzalone Rosso of Precinct 1, Russell Gay of Precinct 8 left to speak.
Thank you. I will also be brief. Having attended public hearings on this probably in the last 18 months and watching this development, I think like Ms. Welch, plenty of us with concerns about numbers are not opposed to affordable housing. My two concerns, this is currently commercially zoned. We don't do ourselves any favors when we don't diversify our tax base and we take commercially zoned properties out of commercial zoning and turn them residential. We don't ease the burden on property owners. And I think the other thing that jumps out at me, I understand that 5 million or 5 point whatever million might well be the fair market value. When you look at, we may look to sell that piece of property for $5-something million. It stands in sharp contrast to the Waterfield development, which we would have sold to Civico for net $500,000. So, property is expensive in our town, but we ought to be good negotiators on any land that we wish to sell to a developer. And we ought to be good stewards of that land and property owners if we want to keep that. And I think the last point I'll make, this came up with Waterfield as well. We often hear when these conversations come up that we need to provide housing for teachers and police and fire and provide opportunities for our public servants to live here. I've never seen that written anywhere. I've heard it thrown around that it provides a place for our teachers to reside, but I've never seen that anywhere in a plan that we would actually target or earmark units for our public servants. I'd feel better about any number of these projects if that was truly the intent, and I just don't see it. So I think I intend to vote no. I just wanted to share those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further on the question, Dorothy Simboli of Precinct 6.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I concur with the previous town meeting member. I'm really torn on this. I really want to vote yes. I voted for the previous taking of this property under the prior number. I don't recall the select board having sort of this carte blanche to proceed without coming back to town meeting. And that to me is very concerning. I agree with everyone who has said town meeting needs to see further details. We need to see those certain units earmarked for our public servants. And one other issue that no one's brought up relating back to Waterfield is the way the RFP was conducted on Waterfield. It did not maximize revenues coming back to the town. So that put the town in a tough negotiating position when they were doing the RFP. And we really need clarification on how the RFP on this particular property is going to be conducted under which procedure, and to make sure that even though it is affordable, we are still maximizing our revenues to the town. I had some questions for Mina Macarius. I kind of wanted to hear what he had to say on it, but I don't know if we really have time for that. I just wanted to know, like, somebody had raised the issue about could we really be taking this by eminent domain to serve a public purpose in this way? And I was wondering if we could hear from town council on that, if we had time or if they're still here. Thank you.
Thank you. I will turn that question over our town council. Town council, would you be able to answer the question regarding eminent domain, please?
Yes, briefly, the question of whether the production of affordable housing is a well-recognized public purpose, both by state courts and federal courts. Both bond counsel and I have looked at this motion several times, both in the last round when it authorized eminent domain for the same purpose of public housing. And that authority with the smaller number is in force right now. And it's both my opinion and bond counsel's opinion that this is a valid public purpose because you'd be developing affordable housing, which is considered one of the things that a municipality could do on its own.
Thank you. Further on the question, Ms. Krista Anzalone Russo of Precinct 1.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Krista Russo, Precinct 1. I'm asking town meeting to really stand up for our neighborhood. We have voted to build turf fields, new schools, beautiful parks. We've dealt with the Morocco School, which has no cafeteria, has flooded. I don't know, I think I believe this neighborhood has been neglected. And I can't imagine if this development was on Church Street, that it would have taken 10 years for us to have this conversation. So just imagine you're living in the flats and this is at the end of your street. Would you move faster? I think probably you would. And I don't think it's un-American to ask the owner to remove obscene graffiti from the building, or to clean it up, or to lock the doors so our youth aren't going in there and drinking. I've called town hall many times about all of these items. The owners have been approached. They have not helped us out in any way. So I urge a yes vote. I urge the town needs to get involved now. We've waited 10 years. We've been very, very patient. And I'm asking that we move forward with a yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the question, Russell Gay of Precinct 8.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just wanted to make an observation about the neighbors Precinct 2 in 2019 voted in favor of this project. 2 years later, it's in front of town meeting. And in 2020, town meeting voted in favor for it to go ahead. So it gave the town a year to do its research, and it's in front of us. And a commercial development was voted down in that neighborhood in the name of a mega CVS. And my question to Select Board Susan Radicchio and Mike Betancourt is, they had mentioned this is one of the last parcels for affordable housing with its location, which its access to walkable downtown. And whereas the town of Winchester would be in charge of developing this lot with the town of Winchester's interests as its focus. If this is not developed or voted in favor of, and we go out of safe harbor, and Bain Capital and Holton Street, are they able to build high density, high rise on their own schedule, and they don't have to go with the town of Winchester's best interests?
Thank you very much. From town meeting member to representative of the proponent, Mr. Michael Betancourt, can you please clarify if this will keep us in safe harbor? And if we lose safe harbor, what will happen with some of the potential developers around town who are waiting for that to occur?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to Mr. Gay. Excellent question. As I mentioned before, we have to stay on track for our commitment to affordable housing, 40 units a year. I think that there's a good chance that we can make an argument to the Department of Housing and Community Development that we are working hard towards that commitment, and even if that it expires in March. There are the property on Holton Street that I've identified that was purchased by Bain Capital for the purpose of a 40B project. There is an option on the Forest Ridge parcel as well, and this parcel, right? So I think that it is likely that there will be a 40B project immediately triggered at the end of March. I think this would help that. And I think that it's likely that a 40B will be developed on this very parcel if we don't do anything. We are trying to move this project forward to give the neighborhood a say in what this building looks like and what happens there, because nothing's happened there. And Mr. Gay, you're absolutely right. The neighborhood said no to a large commercial development there, and there was quite a bit of litigation about it. They said yes to affordable housing there and mixed use residential time after time. Ms. Russo, you heard speak, is also a member of the neighborhood, but also participated in the process of developing a draft RFP. And I would also just acknowledge the concerns that some of the town meeting members. I would be happy to amend our motion in this article to return to town meeting with a proposal that we've identified and recommended, as we've done in the past, if that is the pleasure of town meeting. So we had come back here, even though we had the resources to go with a higher number, really to involve town meeting in this ongoing discussion and commitment that we have. So I would certainly entertain a motion to that effect, to return to town meeting and take away that exclusive authority, I think mentioned by Mr. Cumming. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Further on the question, Carol Savage of Precinct 5.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and thank you to Selectman Bettencourt and the board. I'm concerned about the lateness of the hour and the number of substantive questions that have been raised, and am conscious of wanting to make sure town meeting members feel they've had sufficient time to think about these things. I know a number of other motions have been made to move this or postpone this, but I do wonder if postponing this perhaps to the last item of business of this town meeting would give us the time to more fully consider the questions that have been raised, and perhaps allow precincts to meet to discuss this or whatever. But I put that out there. I'm not sure I'm ready to make that motion yet. Perhaps the right answer is to recess and come back to this on Thursday. But I put that out there for town meeting to think about.
All right, further on the question. Persetta Kalabi of Precinct 1.
Can you hear me, Madam Moderator?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Persetta Kalabi, Precinct 1, in the neighborhood we're talking about. Yes, I think the neighborhood has been pretty clear saying that mixed-use residential would be far better than a mega commercial development. I think we were pretty clear about that. I don't think that most of us have changed our minds. So that's one point. I have a second point, which is that I feel like we have a pattern in town meeting that wherever we come up with talking about affordable housing, everyone says, yes, yes, I'm in favor of affordable housing, but not here, and not here, and not here, and have objections that are more or less spurious. So I wonder how much of that is what's going on here. Because there's always a reason to say no to something, but there's also usually a reason to say yes. Which brings me to my third point, which is when I put my hand up to speak, Mr. Betancourt had not made his point about select board being willing to modify the language of the article. I was going to make the pitch for good faith on the part of all the many people, our neighbors, who have been involved in this process over the many years that has been sitting vacant and ugly, that they have worked very hard and diligently and tried to be as inclusive as possible, and that rather than nitpick where we can nitpick, we should look at all that effort and give them some credit for it and take this on the best possible faith, as well as the data they've given us. So I will vote yes on this, and I hope that you will too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Given the late hour, I'm going to make the executive decision to put this on pause. We will pick it back up at the beginning of our next meeting, which will be on Thursday at 7 o'clock. Hopefully with no technical difficulties. I do have written down those who are still in queue to speak, and I will allow you to have priority. That is Heidi DeLeo, Joyce Westner of Precinct 5, Stephen Boganski of Precinct 4, Michelle Bergstrom of Precinct 3. My apologies to all the consultants and the legal teams that are with us, but we will require you on Thursday again. Personally, just so everyone knows, there is actually a tremendous amount of town meeting members who are still present, and that is why I continued. Well over a quorum, and I was hoping that we might be able to, but given how many people would like to speak still, I feel it is in the best interest of town meeting that we stop at this point and pick it back up Thursday first thing on our agenda. Now, if you can all turn your attention to the V voter, we will be making a motion to adjourn this session. Do I have a second?
Second.
Colin White of Precinct 2 has seconded. We'll be turning to your V voter. Actually, yep. Motion to adjourn, 30 seconds. Let's go. With 114 in the affirmative, 13 in the negative, the affirmative has it, and the motion passed. We are adjourned, and we will reconvene back Thursday at 7 p.m. At this link that you have that were given today through email, the most recent revised link, and the town clerk will be sending it back out to town meeting members. Once again, thank you so much. It makes me very happy to see that our town meeting members are really excited and interested in staying engaged this long. I look forward to seeing you guys on Thursday. All the best. Thank you.
All right, good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. The hour is late. It is 11:15. Let's do a quick review of what has happened here tonight in the first session of Winchester's Fall Town Meeting. We had a consent agenda voted at the beginning where there are 11 articles where there was considered no debate. There was an opportunity for town meeting members to contest that, and none did. Article 1, as usual, is the report of the town officials. We heard from Beth Rudolph, the acting town manager, on COVID-19 impacts, the population increase of 6.6% from 2010. But the town is in healthy financial condition. The operating reserves are at 14.4%, and the goal is greater than 10%. Challenges continue to be school enrollment, bargaining agreements, health insurance, and energy costs. The Swanton Street Bridge project, just down the street from here at the studio, is due to be completed in late November. Water and sewer projects were also listed, including the North Reservoir Dam, and transportation projects, including the reconstruction of Church and Waterfield, parking issues downtown, and the MBTA starting construction of the reconstruction of the train station starting late this year or early in 2022. She also commented on the two current 40B projects moving forward, one on Cambridge Street across from Whole Foods and one off on River Street off Cross Street. Megan Blackwell from the Finance Committee again said revenues were higher than expected, about 20% higher, and expenses were up about 3.6%. Federal CARES funding is coming, and the town, again, is in a strong financial position. But she advised town meeting members to consider establishing an override stabilization fund and conservative spending. Karen Bolognese from the school committee commented on the interim school superintendent, Frank Hackett, and talked about the fall back to school, in-person learning and the COVID protocols in the school, and concern over the enrollment from some of these 40B projects. That, again, reports are just accepted and placed on file. Article 3 was the planning board's report. Talked about multi-unit projects that are currently in the pipeline. The Fells hardware project, 735 Main Street across at the corner of Skillings Road, 416 Cambridge Street, River Street, and proposals for redevelopment at Converse Place. He said the town will lose what they call safe harbor status in March 2022 unless more 40B, more affordable housing is permitted. The North Main Street, North Main Street project, the study is underway and showing the potential for changes. That's in Main Street from Skillings Road up to the Woburn line. The final report is due this month. Recommendations will be made to Fall Town Meeting 2022. There's also a project studying underway for Holton Street. That will be presented to town meeting next fall too. Floodplain, Article 4 from Brian Selesky, the town planner, is to allow residents, floodplain zoning revisions to allow residents to obtain flood insurance. That was passed. A proposal by the town, Article 5 was a proposal by the planning board to reclassify half stories, and that some half stories were much greater than intended. They said they looked at other towns, and this was to say that a floor area over 7 feet high could not be greater than 65% of the second floor. That failed. The Article 6 to establish a master plan implementation committee was indefinitely postponed. Article 7 was giving the select board the opportunity to move the annual town election to the last Saturday in March. And the purpose of that was to avoid conflicts with schools in session, voters coming to schools that are in session. That was passed. It also has the potential for using the Winchester High School as the town's only polling spot. Again, that was passed. Article 8 was an article to transfer management of the town forest from the Town Forest Committee to the Conservation Commission. Its town forest is 29 acres over by the Medford line was acquired in 1941. Town meeting approved that. Article 9, again, if you were watching, that's the most contentious one. That is a proposal to allow the select board, authorize them to spend up to $5.3 million to purchase and resell the property, the derelict property, dilapidated property at Swanton and Washington Street, and then to purchase it for up to $5.3 million and then to resell it to a developer to recoup that money. In 2019, there was a proposal for 60 units on that site, mixed for mixed residential and commercial, of which 25% would be affordable. It's a key location in town. It's a key location to redevelop some parts of Swanton Street, but it's also walkable to the town center, to the Winchester Hospital, and Morocco and high schools. That proposal was dropped for unknown reasons. There was a comment that 340 units are being proposed for Holton Street, which could move forward if the town moves out of safe harbor in March 2022. Representative Mike Day came on and said that an additional 150,000 was coming in from the state to assist that in the debt service for that 5.3 million that the town would have to borrow, and then there would be a gap before it was recouped from a developer. This is a mix of rentals and commercial space, not condominiums, because rental space gives the town full credit for affordable housing. There was a comment that current owners have shown no interest in affordable housing. So we heard from a lot of town meeting members over their concerns over what the finished project would be like. One town meeting member said, could there be a 7-story building on there? And another town meeting member suggested they're earmarked some of these units for Winchester public servants, such as teachers, firefighters, and police officers. Well, it came to 11:15, and the moderator decided that the best procedure for this, since there were a lot of people that still wanted to speak on it, was to adjourn the meeting and resume discussion on this article on Thursday night, which we will do. So we want to thank you for staying up for this late hour. I want to thank the WinCam staff that's staying here and that have pulled together the technical details of putting on a remote town meeting. So, and a reminder that WinCam is viewer supported. You are the viewers. It's supported through fees on your cable, but we're also a 501c3, and your donations are welcome. And we feel that we're providing a valuable